Okay, so Article 13 concludes the major budgeting portion of the warrant, while a number of the articles that follow do have financial implications for the town. For the most part, they do not address the town's operating budget directly, except for Article 23, which we will come to later on. Okay, so Article 14 is the result of work by the Governance Task Force, and rather than explain the work of the task force myself, I'm going to ask Task Force Chair Kitty Sturgis, who is a little under the weather, and I guess she's going to have George speak for her, to step to the microphone and give a brief explanation of the charge and how they approach their work and how they feel about this particular article.
Well, this past year, we're working on treasurer, tax collector, but then with the resignation of Ruth Hohenschau, it became the appropriate time to worry about a financial director for the accounting department. And so that's where we grabbed the thing and started to run with it. George will explain it to you. The committee is very grateful for input from David Williams and also town council over the last few months of trying to get the article in shape and hopefully no changes by annual town meeting. And I'm turning the floor over to George. Thank you.
This is the article that will establish the finance director accountant appointment, and it is the job description for that. It's available in the warrant. I really don't want to read the entire thing.
I don't blame you.
Speak
I
up.
don't want to read this either.
Right, so speak up, George.
This particular presentation is 3 pages long. I'm not sure you really want to listen to all 3 pages of it, but it's broken down into the reasons behind the timing of the implementation of the recommendations, the functions of the financial director and accountant position, the financial director accounting and reporting, who it reports to, who the office reports to, and the integration of the financial functions of the town. Is there any one of those subcategories that you'd like to hear the most about?
I think we're all quite familiar.
I would think that you would be, given the number of presentations we made. I think I'll just highlight some of the more, from my opinion, some of the more important provisions. One, it immediately creates a position that was anticipated by the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator. It is consistent with most of the legislation that governs the functions of the accountant, or what the accountant can or can't do, the treasurer, elected or appointed, the collector, and coupled with this is a recommendation that the collector's position be expanded to encompass all collections of all revenue in the town, as contrasted with the current situation, which has each service provider collecting fees. It is consistent with the recommendation from the Collins and the Office of Revenue. In that it provides for an implementation over a period of a specific period of time. If you're converting positions, you know it takes a substantial period of time to get that done. The incremental implementation of the creation of a finance department is, in my opinion, very appropriate, in the sense that it avoids, this recommendation avoids the major political decisions that seem to have run into some difficulty over the years, and yet it lays the groundwork for the ultimate implementation of most of the recommendations that were made for the conversion and consolidation of departments involved with finance. It separates the financial director from the town administrator, in that it requires the town administrator and the financial director to report directly to the Board of Selectmen. This was, on the part of the task force, was deliberate. It follows what we consider the business model of having the the operational executive separate from the financial executive, given the executive office, the Board of Selectmen, the opportunity to see two different perspectives of every issue that comes before you and comes before them, the operational need and the financial realities. This way, the Board of Selectmen, must involve themselves in making those determinations as contrasted with having a single administrator make those recommendations. It's not a negative reflection on either person. It's a deliberate attempt to provide the Board of Selectmen with the appropriate information to make the policy decisions that both study committees recommended that they make. It provides, not as strong as we would have liked, but it provides for an integration of the financial services given to the town. We originally had a team concept which was going to subject that team to open meeting laws, which we didn't think was appropriate for administrative activity, in order to not circumvent but to avoid the delays of an open meeting requirements. We have softened the language so that it provides for consultation and recommendations, but it also provides a form in which those consultations and recommendations can be explored, problems isolated, solutions developed. So while it's not as strong as we would have liked, the reality of the Commonwealth's laws required softening the language. And that's about it.
Okay, perfect. She just yelled time. You are something, George. Okay, good job.
He's had a lot of
Okay. So are there comments from the floor? Okay,
So the selectmen support this by a 3-0 vote.
great.
Just the only concern, eyes wide open on this, is that it is, and George explained it very well,
Right.
it is moving away from the initiative of the town to have a strong town administrator, where this position is reporting to the Board of Selectmen. So it puts an additional burden on the selectmen to manage this position. There is wording in here that allows for day-to-day coordination, all that, so.
As long as
but it- So it should
day-to-day
work,
is-
and so we supported it. We think it all makes sense.
Any comment up here now?
I have a question, so,
Microphone.
oh, I'm sorry. The, on this article, the concept is fine, it's been discussed many times. Of the 10 powers and duties described in this, which of those cannot be accomplished currently?
Cannot be accomplished. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Well, we have someone who's filling this accountant, this position, forget what the title is. I'm just asking of the 10 duties that are enumerated in this article, excuse me, in the article, I'm curious which ones of those 10 cannot be accomplished under our current scheme?
Yeah, I mean, we can let George address this. Paul's saying item B. I mean, in general, even with the things that can be accomplished, this directs how they are to be accomplished. It also provides for the coordination that George described among the various financial departments or officers in town, so that they're working on a team-type approach.
Fair enough. I'll get right to the point. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to create bylaws if they're not necessary. And my only question would be here, I look at any number of these, and it seems to me that under our current scheme, there's nothing preventing this position and the other positions described to do all of the functions here. Maybe not 100%, but 90, 95%. And, number A, for letter A example, says report to the Board of Selectmen. Well, that happens. B says appoint and employ people in the department. Well, that's going to happen. Manage cash flow.
Right now, that happens through the town administrator. This would make the financial director responsible
No, I understand
for
that,
financial
but
positions.
if the selectman said, town administrator, we don't want you to do that anymore, we want the accountant slash finance administrator to do it, is there anything that, just by your saying that's what we want you to do, that authority is now shifted away from the town
I
administrator?
don't think so. I think that's our obligation, and the town administrator by bylaw appoints people in his department. So this is a change, I believe.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, please, George.
Well, first of all, the bylaw indirectly, perhaps, addresses a problem that has been brought to our attention on a regular basis, and that was the independence of elected officials when it came down to coordination. The bylaw will require those elected officials, whether they particularly care for it or not, to coordinate their operations with the operations of the rest of the financial team. I strike the word team, group. But more importantly, the statute, the bylaw rather, that you're suggesting is not needed, in my opinion, is needed, because if you look at our bylaws, the bylaw that contains the definition of the duties of the town administrator is entitled Definition of Duties for Officials Not Elected. And if you wish to check that out, you can. So we've taken the position as a town that there are elected officials that have designated statutory duties, and there are non-elected officials whose duties are set forth in the bylaws. Now, in addition to all of that, I will borrow an argument from Paul Dorinzis. At some point in the future, this town may or may not decide to coordinate a great many of the functions into one position, treasurer, collector, or however you wish to reconfigure those functions. The suggested method of doing that from the Board of Selectmen originally was Chapter 43, Section C of the general bylaws, which requires the town looking to accept that provision to have a bylaw that sets out the duties of the position of the Director of Finance. This lays the groundwork for experimenting with that concept, and it facilitates the ultimate adoption of that concept, which we did not propose this year. As a matter of fact, we opposed it this year because we didn't believe, as a task force, that that particular wide sweeping approach would work. That incremental implementation of that wide sweeping conversion would work. We didn't think it would work for two reasons. One, we have people in the positions that are in question. We have new dynamics in town government in the sense that we have 5 new selectmen, or will have a new select board which will have 5 members. We have a brand new accountant, which on the surface seems to be very acceptable from a structural point of view and from a personnel competency point of view. But that doesn't necessarily provide us with even a short-term assessment of how that office, regardless of who's in it, is going to work. This will give you a laboratory to make that determination. So, if you're going to ultimately look down the road and say, the model of 43C is where we want to go, this is one step in that direction. And I think it's an appropriate step because it doesn't step on any political toes, doesn't cause any political aggravation at this point, and it moves us into a situation where we can see whether the concept of 43C will actually work here.
And was the governance task force unanimous on bringing this forward?
Yes, I believe it was, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, George.
Okay.
Okay?
Does this, by defining this position, does this entail another level of remuneration?
I don't believe so.
She voted her budget.
You voted the budget.
No, but I'm saying with the town, what the town accountant is now being paid is going to be it. It's not going to suddenly be next year, well, we have a finance director, so we need another level of salary.
I didn't hire the financial director / accountant. The town manager made those arrangements. The Board of Selectmen, I presume, signed the contract.
The expectations, like we said before, when we went out to hire a town accountant, is we were going to treat them as a finance director regardless. So the answer is no, there's nothing
Okay.
else in
So
the
we have
budget
a,
there.
we have a de facto finance director.
Yes, we do.
And I wanted, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Could I answer Jeff's? We were just talking that out of the 10 there, A, B, C, F, G, I, and J all strengthen the position of the accountant finance director.
As I said before, I am not disputing the wisdom of any of these activities. I'm simply questioning as to whether or not we need a bylaw in order for this position to perform any of those. And I have not heard otherwise. I believe all of these activities, if we had no bylaw, all of these activities can be accomplished by this person. That's my only point, and it comes from the basic philosophy is if you don't need a bylaw, you shouldn't enact a bylaw. Coordinating reports, doing all of this stuff, knock yourself out, do it. Great idea. I'm just a little confused as to why we need a bylaw to say you can do these things. That's my only point.
I think I would just still refer to the same list of items that we do need those, and that's what was the result of the discussions with governance.
Can
We
I add
can't-
a little levity to the answer? Even God decided that we needed 10 commandments written down. And it would seem to me that it doesn't hurt to write down what could be accomplished in the abstract, but now we know is written down.
But didn't you also just say that we need to have this in order to?
No, I don't say I'm God.
Oh, no.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Didn't you also just say that we need to have this in order to get to the ultimate place where you want to go because it needs to refer to something that's written down?
My presentation indicated that this is a step in that direction. It doesn't say that it has to be taken. The next step has to be taken. It just says that if you take the next step, this bylaw will be in existence. If you don't have it in existence, you're going to have to pass a bylaw if and when you get to the 43C.
So we have to have this one way or the other if we want to get
If you're
to
going to
where
go
we
that
wanna
way, that's right.
That's my
Well,
question.
let's be clear. If you go 43C, you do 43C in its entirety. 43C is talking about a finance director for a town designed when you have all of the functions of the town
Yes.
under one director, including the treasurer. That's what 43C is all about. This obviously leaves that out. So if the town does go in that direction, you're going to have to change this bylaw in order to accomplish the underlying purpose of it, because this excludes the treasurer from the automatic control of the finance director.
I'm not 100% in agreement with that observation. If you, accept 43C, one of the reasons we tried to avoid it was because 43C is so misdrafted that you really can't tell what the legislature wants. And it's just not people in Sherborn who can't tell what 43 wants. We contacted state agencies to ask them what their opinion of the adoption of 43C would mean. And they came back almost universally saying, we don't know.
That's not surprising.
What we do know is that if you go to 43C and you indicate that there's a full-blown finance department, you still have to address the issues of whether the treasurer, collector, etc., will be elected. If you choose to do it, you can do it under 41B. You have something in front of you that suggests that now, except not with the collector. If you do it under 43C, it's not clear that it's automatic. You may have to do that anyways under 41. At least that's the recommendation, not the recommendation, the observation of the two agencies that we talked to. So, you may not have to modify this bylaw at all because it has been modified already to accomplish it because it says appointed or elected treasurer. So if you have an appointed one, it's there. If you have an elected one, it's there.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Okay, any further comment up here? All right, then I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 14.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay, 8-1.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kitty, and please go home and take care of yourself. Oh, you're breaking my heart, Kitty, really. Okay, Article 15. To see if the town will vote to make the office of treasurer an appointed office to be filled by appointment of the Board of Selectmen in accordance with General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 1B, upon acceptance by the voters at the annual town election, and to amend the Personnel Administration Plan, Appendix A, to include the position of treasurer as an exempt position under Job Classification 3, or take any other action relative thereto. Comments from the floor?
I guess that's me.
That would
Since
start
we're
to
Board of
be you.
Selectmen, I got delegated. Here we are, 3 times the charm, right?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I'll tell you why, we decided this is still a good idea. We think
Okay.
it's right for Sherborn, so that's why we're bringing it back. We're obviously persistent on that. So in that, we're looking for the best interests of all of the residents of the town of Sherborn here. And we try to put, relationships, politics, individuals aside when we do that. This is municipal best practice. 75% of the communities in the town have moved in the state have moved in this direction. It's recommended by the Department of Revenue. It's recommended by the Collins Report. Yes, it was defeated twice now. The last time, 105 people or 2.5% of the population killed this thing at the special town meeting. You'll hear about the importance of segregation of duties. I studied finance and accounting. I've managed finance departments. I'm not sure what that means exactly sometimes, but the key is really accountability, and I think the exposure to the town is when you have lack of accountability, when you have an independent person who's, I'll just leave it at that. My mother told me not to say bad things, so I don't say bad things. So I think what we're trying to do is continue efforts to bring Sherborn into the 21st century. This is the continuing effort in that direction.
Well,
If I'm not saying what you want me to say, take the mic away. The idea is to have a ballot question on the ballot. And in order to have a ballot question that would be voted on by the town, this article is necessary to set that up. So what we're asking you to do is let the whole town vote on this. All the other times this has been looked at, it's been strictly a town meeting vote. And as we all know, people are very busy in their lives, and to get a big town meeting with 2,500 people to attend, or some kind of representation of the entire voters, is very hard. But to put it on the ballot, let the people decide. And in order to get it on the ballot, we as a board, that's what we really want to do, is just put it on the ballot and let the voters decide. But we can't do that without town meeting putting it on the ballot. So that's what this article is about, to put it on the ballot.
okay, so just quick question. If it is defeated at town meeting, does it still go on the ballot?
No.
Okay,
Well, it may be on the ballot by that point, but it'll be a nullity.
okay. Okay, David, you had a question?
I just wanted to say that when he's saying it would go on the ballot if this passes,
Right.
it's not for this election.
Well, it is for this election, if you put it on the ballot for this election.
Can't be in this election. I'm sorry, it can't be.
Could be
There's 60 days between the authorization.
Okay, so that would go on the ballot the following year?
That was my understanding.
Okay,
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
okay,
I'm sorry that I confused you.
okay. Something to say, George?
Me?
Yes?
The task force is opposed to any affirmative action on this article. We believe that the proposal that we've just discussed provides for an incremental implementation of the restructuring of the finance operation. We would oppose muddying the waters with the election as proposed by the Board of Selectmen. They can't do what they want to do this year anyways. That restricts the candidate universe, it would seem to me. because the most the new candidate can get is a year. Right? Fill out the position that's there, no, and with the question of whether there's going to be an elected position next year or an appointed position next year is going to be an issue that will cloud or maybe even limit the candidate pool. We already have two in their minds, qualified candidates, and in my mind, the credentials of both those candidates for the treasurer's position that's elected this year have the credentials to do a very good job. So the argument that used to be used that the elected position did not guarantee professional excellence doesn't wash any longer. We have got an election this year. There are, as I understand it, two candidates that have taken out papers, both of whom I know personally, both of whom I've got the credentials to perform the job. Why would we muddy the waters on a thought-out plan to implement over the years with this particular politically controversial issue?
Thank you, George.
Mary, if I could address some of that. First of all, I think George just pointed out the election wouldn't be for another year, so we really aren't muddying any waters this year. We're trying to put a very important question to the vote of the town on a ballot in the way it hasn't been put to the town before. Secondly, all the talk about personality and who's willing to run and who's not willing to run really misses the point. The point of this article is to improve the structure of our town's government in a tried and true way that the vast majority of municipalities like us in the Commonwealth have already implemented. It's an archaic approach to have an elected treasurer. It restricts the town in terms of the field of available candidates, and it turns the treasury position into a political position. Witness all the angst and, emotionally laden communications that have been going around on this subject for the past year. That's all because it's an elected position. We didn't have any of that going on when we appointed a new town accountant. This is a subject. It's time for Sherborn to move into the modern world and to get a grip on its financial functions and its structure and its organization and do what most of the towns in the Commonwealth have already figured out is a good idea. Let's try to make it the best structure we can have rather than playing political games.
Could I just add to that, just because of what George said, full disclosure, I have the paper that I got at the 11th hour. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I got it just in case I got inspired over the weekend here, but just for full disclosure. So I still am very much in favor of going the appointed treasurer route, and the other candidate has also gone on record as being in favor of the appointed treasurer route. So so here we are. Just wanted to disclose that.
That is a point to make, which is that Heather did mention that after a year she was not adverse to an appointed treasurer position. She mentioned that at our Board of Selectmen meeting.
And at advisory the other night as well.
If I could just add to that. But if someone is elected this election, that's only for a one-year term.
Right.
To fill out the unexpired term of the former treasurer, Pete Hoagland. So there would be, if there's favorable action on this thing, then there would be a vote of the town, and the impact would be, let me start that sentence again. The Collins Institute and Department of Revenue indicated that the best time to do these kind of changes is when there is change in the office, so that you aren't dealing with incumbents who are in midterm and all of that. There will be a year under the belt to see how this bylaw that you just voted approval of works, how the five-man board is working, how the town is working. Next year, the term will be up. Everything seems to come together for a chance for the community to look at this with a fairly unencumbered view. If next year at this time, it's not, and you'll be all meeting before the election. If it turns out that this isn't a good idea, it's something that we can not put on the ballot.
Thanks, Paul.
George Morgan. I'm a little surprised that we're seeing this thing pop up again after the voters have clearly expressed in the last town meeting barely 6 months ago that they did not wish to support this measure. We have only in this past month actually nominated a person on caucus for this position as an elected position. And it does not seem to me that we have done a bad job over the last 35 years with the people that we've had in the Treasurer's office. I have full confidence in the voters of this town, having been here for 35 years myself, that we can elect a person who is competent and who will do the job properly as it has been done. And I do not see any particular reason why the board or anybody else in this town would want to, at this stage of the game, barely 6 months after the vote was taken, to rescind this, to try to bring it up again. If in a year's time there is still some interest in having this thing as an unelected position because somehow people don't believe that elected officials can do this job, then yes. But I would ask at this point that the town remove this article from consideration any further for this year's town warrant. Thank you.
Nancy.
Nancy Hess, 64 South Main Street. I'll address a couple of things that are said before I say what I was going to say. I'm surprised that Peter doesn't understand the risk management, because that's the separation of duties is one of the primary things in our courses where they teach about risk management with finances. And to constantly quote that 75% of the communities have gone this way includes all the communities. If you look at the smaller communities that are like us in size, that percentage changes dramatically. And one of the strongest arguments that has been made, first of all, was that we were going to save money, and we debunked that. And then the other one was that we may not be able to get qualified candidates, and that's not here yet. The day may come, and yes, we might have to go to appointed. And you saw last year what happened when we were without a treasurer. It automatically became appointed under the Board of Selectmen for the interim. I heard the voters say not yet, just a few months ago, and the reasons I heard were, it's not necessary, we have competent candidate mentored by the prior treasurer. We want to keep the separation of power. We want our financial officer to answer to the law and the electorate, not the politic. There are too many moving parts already, and now we have even more since we've lost some key people. We haven't had time to test the 5-man board, and it's fine to say that if we vote for this now and it doesn't work out, we can pull the ballot. Well, the discussion happens at town meeting, and all of the publicity and everything happens prior to town meeting. If this just appears on the ballot, it doesn't get the same kind of vetting next year as it gets when it's presented. And that people do not want to give up their right to vote and choose who will serve as their officers. So I would urge you to support no action on this, to make it a benign thing that they're just voting to put it on the ballot is not sincere, because it asks them to support moving the position from elected to appointed. Thanks.
Carol Marple, Stony Brook Road. I raise another cloudy issue with this warrant article. I'm curious as to the rationale for the choice of job classification.
I talked to Personnel Board, and that's where I believe it should be.
I would read you the other people who are in the third job classification. Facilities manager, which of course we don't have anymore, clerk of the works, assistant town officers, not town officers, but assistant town officers, fire captains and lieutenants, inspectors, Board of Health administrator, librarians, Council on Aging directors currently here, but I understand personnel is wanting to move her to category 2. Conservation agent and waterfront director. And it doesn't seem to me that the town treasurer belongs in that category.
You can
So I
strike
would,
that out if you want. It's
I
not-
would, on that point alone, I'd urge no action on this, never mind the rest of it.
Yeah, obviously, that can be amended if that's a concern of anybody else besides Carol. And she may have a valid point, I don't know. What we heard earlier today was that those classifications are not based on salary categories, they're based on functional classifications. So,
You could just say, and to amend the personnel admin plan.
Well, we can't change the warrant, though, right?
well, we can change it by amendment on the floor if
Right,
people wanted
right.
to do that. I did want to address the comments that the town meeting has already voted, et cetera. We're the Board of Selectmen, it's our obligation to tell the town what, in our view, is the best approach. If the town meeting wants to reject that, fine, they've done so over our advice, and they've done that before over our advice, that's fine. We're not going to not put it on the ballot because when we think it's a good idea. We're going to put it on the ballot for on the warrant, rather, for the town meeting, and let the town meeting decide if they want to put it on the ballot. If they don't put it on the ballot, maybe the next Board of Selectmen will try something else to do it again, or maybe they won't. I don't know.
Thanks. Robert?
Robert Johnson, 272 Western Avenue, and I respectfully disagree with what you just heard. We just voted on this. We voted it down. Let's not take it up again in 6 months.
Okay, any comments up here?
I just reiterate what Bob said. I think that it sends the wrong message. I understand what Mike said about the selectmen have to do what they think is best for the town, but I think it disrespects the voters. If we went to them and asked their opinion in October, whenever it was, and it would say, we know you gave us your opinion, but we don't agree, so we're going to keep asking you until we get the answer we want. I don't think that's right. I think it may, as Nancy brought up, may at some point in the future need to be relooked at. And I understand, I don't think the selectmen are wrong. I think they are trying to do the right thing, and that it is probably more a modern-day model, as Mike has so accurately pointed out. But I feel it's a bad precedent to go back to the voters when they told you what they wanted. Admittedly, it was a special town meeting, but I think it's a bad precedent to go back to them, not even 6 months later, with the same question. That, to me, says we didn't listen to you. So I vote no action. I
That
would
might be
support
accurate.
no action.
I don't disagree with you, Jeff. I think we heard what that town meeting said, and we think it was the wrong answer, and we're asking this town meeting to make a different decision. So
I
if
got it.
that's disrespect for the voters, I don't think it is. It's respect for the voters who will be at this current town meeting and who can make a decision.
So I would recommend, I would support a no action consideration.
Mary, I would comment as well that, first of all, I think, I personally, in this committee last year, supported this, an appointed treasurer. I think personally, and again, the committee did, but personally, I think it's the right idea, okay, and it should be done. However, having said that, just as I said with respect to the previous article, I agree with everything that's in it. I agree as well that this is the wrong approach now. The angst, Michael, that you talked about, as far as being, I don't take that as a negative with respect to what the town was viewing the elected official. I take that as a sign that the town was really interested in the subject, okay? And I think the angst is a mark of democracy, not a mark against democracy in that regard. But in any event, but the precedent which I think is unwise is, yes, you guys should do whatever you think is appropriate. The fact that you have the right to do it or the power to do it doesn't necessarily mean you should do it. Because keep in mind, citizens can do petitions too. We could have then, taking the same precedent, we could have this issue, whichever way it goes, come back the opposite way with a citizen's position, and then the next town meeting the same thing. I think in order for democracy to work well in this context, it's wise, not required, wise to let a little dust settle. Otherwise, we could be doing the same thing every town meeting. We'll go one way, the other way, and that's not productive in my view. So I think that the wiser course here is to let it settle, because we've had 2 votes against it. A year or 2 or 3, maybe it should get revisited. But I think there's something to be said for letting things settle, in my view.
Lanny?
Yes, I agree with the 2 Jeffs that this is not the time to do this.
Okay.
Can I ask you a quick
Sure.
question? George, the government's task force voted against this. Was it unanimous, or did you recall what the vote was?
Unanimous of the vote of the people who were there.
Okay, you said unanimous of the people that were there. I'm of 2 minds on this. I see merit on both sides, but I do give deference to the task force that looks into it, that being their job.
Other comments here? Okay. I am going to speak to say that I am in favor of this. Because I'm basically in favor of an elected treasurer for the town. I think it's the right thing. I think it's the way the town needs to go.
Appointed.
I'm sorry, yes, appointed. I think it's the right way to go. I think this is what the future of the town is and should be. And so I understand what people are saying about letting the dust settle and all those things. I, however, do not want to give the impression to people in the town that I used to think this was a good idea and I no longer do. I thought it was a good idea last year. I thought it was a good idea in the fall. I think it's a good idea now to have an appointed treasurer for the town for all the reasons that I've spoken of before. And so that's just my feelings on it. So if there are no more comments, okay, I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 15. Is there Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. All opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the motion is defeated, 5-4. Okay, Article 16.
We have to read.
The other way.
Oh, yes, I guess we do. Okay, so then I will take a motion for no action on Article 15.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed?
Imagine that.
Numbers came out the same.
Okay. It's an astounding thing. Astounding thing.
Imagine for what?
Okay. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of MGL 41, Section 38A, as amended in 2014, and authorize the tax collector, under the title of Town Collector, to collect any accounts due the town upon the agreement of the town collector and the relevant department head to whose department the accounts are owed, or take any other action relative thereto. Oh, there you go. I was looking for you, Nancy, and I didn't see you.
I've stood up over there enough
Okay.
that I come over here.
Well, have a seat then.
Thank you. This is not new to anybody sitting up there, I don't think, and probably to most of the community. We had brought this forward a couple of times, and there were issues with the fact that the law said that collector, under the name of town collector, shall collect all accounts. And the intent of everybody in the room was to not make that rigid. So with the help of Representative Linsky and Senator Ross, we marched this through the legislature and changed the language so that it now says the collector shall have the authority to collect any accounts, so that gives us some flexibility and allows us to start bringing in some of the things that are on the peripheral, and we can do it, we can phase it in. I'm very committed to making this a collaborative thing rather than a dictated thing, and my goal to start is to just get as much stuff online so that people can pay for some of these things online and not have to come to town hall, and that will be a major move in and of itself because everybody's going to have their own little thing. And then I've had people speak to me already about, can I get my stuff to come through your office? And so I don't think that we're going to have a problem getting it rolling and getting it rolling in such a way that we don't have to hold a stick over anybody's head. But if the case comes where the Board of Selectmen or another group really wants to see something come through and we get resistance from some department or other, you have the option later to firm up language in another go-round. But I think we have plenty on our plate for the first year.
Okay, any further comment from the floor?
Sure. The Board of Selectmen were 2-1 in favor of this, even though it was on last year's town meeting warrant and didn't get passed. We decided it made sense to bring it back, and we're in favor of it by 2-1, and we worked with Nancy a little bit on the language.
Thanks.
I had several concerns. One is that this sets it up between the tax collector and the relevant department head with no role for the Board of Selectmen at all. And or the town administrator in trying to sort this out as to what would be a good management practice. It seemed to me, just in terms of our commitment to a town administrator and our responsibilities as the chief elected officers of the town, to have all these things being done offline, in back rooms, if you will, without our involvement, isn't good government. And the second issue was that there's so much flux going on with different offices and different our efforts to make reforms, that and the tax collector being often mentioned as one of the pieces in either a new finance department or whatever else, then instead of tinkering now with one of the offices, that all ought to be done in a more systematic and consistent way, so that when the tax collector's position is looked at to see how it integrates in them, that's an issue that should be addressed then. So for those two reasons, I was hesitant to go along with doing this year.
Thank you, Paul.
Could I respond to that, Mary? I've had discussions with David about this in prior time, and he knows that I'm very willing to cooperate, and he ultimately does control most of the departments that are involved in this, so I would think that ultimately he would have a say, and he's responsible to you, so it's not like you're shut out of the process entirely.
But that's not what this says. This gives legal authority for any department to make a deal with the town collector. There's no reference to the town administrator.
But he oversees most of the departments.
What about the ones that he doesn't oversee? How does that work?
Well, there are very few of those, but some have already approached me, and as I said, if we've got a lot on our plate to do in a year. If you don't see it working the way you want in a year, then you tinker with it next year.
And also, Vicki, if he doesn't control the department, then even if it said David or the Board of Selectmen, we wouldn't be able to control that anyway. So that really doesn't matter. I did work with Nancy on this language, and I was comfortable with that language. And one of the thoughts is you want to have a department head that's comfortable with the approach, at least to start this process off. So you have agreement to collect the money from Nancy, and you have agreement by the department head that that's an effective, efficient way to do it. And then over time, if you wanted to set it up a slightly different way, that would be pretty easy to do. This is a way to get started in this process.
Carol?
Carol Marple, speaking as town clerk. I've already talked to Nancy about this. My department was ready to go to online payments last year when this article was, a similar article came forward, and we backed off. If we pass this article, I'll be delighted, because instead of having to set up my own accounts, I can use Nancy's. And it seems an efficiency that will certainly be welcome in my department. Thank you.
Are you speaking, Peter? Okay.
Peter Lifford, Chairman of the Board of Health, Doppingbrook Road. I had to go home and do my exercises, so now I'm in my exercise clothes. I'm not as formal, I'm sorry.
We're cool, Peter.
With apologies. But on this subject, I was sitting watching you at home as I did my exercises, and was surprised to suddenly look at the next two articles down and see this one and the following one, so I had to rush back here. But on this article in particular, the Board of Health collects over $52,000 a year in fees and so forth. We'd be thrilled to not have to handle those, all right? I mean, the fact is that this could be centralized, it'd be a centralized accountability, the vouchering, the bookkeeping, everything is so simplified. To have this, all these monies coming from various places and possibly sitting in desk drawers for days and not being properly vouchered and accounted for, I got to tell you, it's a huge improvement for us, And I'd be just as happy if administratively we didn't have to touch a single dollar of that. So
Okay,
hope you
great.
do this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Robert?
I hear that other departments are delighted to hand this off to the tax collector or treasurer or collector. This sounds like a lot less work for them. It also sounds like it's more work for the collector. So is the collector's office going to have more hours to handle this additional work? Seems like they should.
I'm anticipating that the setup and all of this is going to take a little bit of time, and we'll have, by the next town meeting, a grasp on whether or not we need more help. Hopefully, we're going to be able to manage it with the staff that we have and the time that we have.
George?
The task force voted in favor of the concentration of revenue collections. I made reference to that earlier. It's premised on based on the premise, rather, that the town is going to invest in an electronic system which will ease and validate the collection process and also the deposit process. As was pointed out to you, a number of town agencies collect enormous amounts of money. I think that the concentration of the collection and the use of computers and software that would distribute the money both from the collector's point of view back to the town's departments that would originally collected the fee, back to the treasurer, all in one operation, seems to me to be a very efficient way to go. It also seems to me that it also increases, doesn't decrease, the supervision of the flow of money over what we currently have. So I have to disagree with Paul on his proposed illegal use of money. I think that this would actually increase the oversight and would provide the Board of Selectmen with daily, if they wish to look at it, daily records of what was collected and where it was collected and where it went.
Thank you. All right, any further comment out there? Okay, any comment up here? Okay. Then I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 16.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. All right, Article 17. This is to see if the town will vote to amend the Town Personnel Administration Plan, Section 4, by inserting a new Section 4D as follows. I can read this, or I can explain it, that it is to set up a policy that discourages working from home, but allows for it under unusual circumstances. If people would like, I can read this article, but that's what it does. All right. Yes. Okay. So is there a comment from the floor?
I thought personnel was here. Yeah, I can speak for personnel, I believe. It was brought to their attention that they should draft a work-from-home policy because there were occasionally situations where some employees were given permission by either the board they work for or their supervisor to work at home one day for whatever reason. To my knowledge, it only happened once or twice. It's not a big thing, but it could be. So putting it down on paper that there's a guide to go by is a good idea.
Peter?
This is the article that got me up out of my chair and down here to talk to you. Again, Peter Lifford, I'm Chairman of the Board of Health, and that's the position from which I'd like to speak to you, because this appears to apply to every person that works in Town Hall, both elected, appointed boards, town administrator departments, and would include, obviously, the two employees of the Board of Health. And to that end, I think it's surprising that this is the first time I've seen this when I read it this afternoon. I did know that personnel was talking about a work-from-home issue and that they had taken it under advisement in relation to some other activities. But my point is, this is the first I've seen this, and apparently it would be affecting the Board of Health employees. And so as I read it, I kind of suddenly realized, well, it really doesn't take account of our past winter when the employees couldn't get to town, but still, and our salaried employee was willing to work from home and cover the bases and do emails and so forth. And yet I get, as I read this, that wouldn't have been allowed. That would have had to been done by a prior arrangement with approval by the town administrator, which could not have been achieved because obviously the storm was unexpected. I think it's a good idea to set down some ground rules for this eventuality, but I'm a little chagrined that this came up so suddenly and that I don't know whether or not it was sent on to, you know, the Conservation Commission or the Planning Board. I'm not sure how it affects their employees either. But for us, there would be times when we'd be actually asking our administrator to violate this, if you will, in the interest of getting the work done. Even now, she doesn't have set hours. She doesn't have fixed hours, so she puts all her hours in the office, and I know by my emails that, you know, she's working in the evenings and doing emails that, you know, isn't counted time. But I just think that this needs to be fine-tuned a bit more.
Time, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right,
I
sorry.
forgot about the 2 minutes. Okay.
David?
I just wanted to say, I think one of the issues that the Personnel Board talked about was a continuance of operations, so that there was somebody else reviewing, you know, is an office going to continue, or if that person is out, is the whole office closed and no services are being delivered at that point? And I think they wanted another person reviewing that situation.
Mike?
To Peter's comment about the emails from home, which is a very good point, and it was raised, someone had raised whether the police also, who are always on duty based on some of the agreements the town has, would be subject to this. Obviously not. It's not intended to pick up, you know, salaried workers who might do emails or things from home. It's intended to pick up people's, as I understand it, people who have regular working hours for their job, but for whatever reason, illness or disability or some other issue for a temporary period of time can't come into the office. And for the same reason, I think you raise a good point about working from home during bad weather. I would assume that the town administrator could set a policy, or the different departments could set a policy that the town administrator could approve, that if town hall were closed, the worker could continue to work from their home. It's not intended to preclude that. It's intended to put rules on, you know, issues where there's a particular person who has a particular need for a particular period of time, and make sure there's some consistency in that, and as David said, to make the operations keep running. So, and this comes from personnel. It's not something we originated, but that was the understanding from the hearing we had with them.
David?
I just want to reiterate from Mike that we didn't ask personnel to come forward with this. This was, I think, complaints from some other employees that were filed to Personnel Board, and then they looked at the situation and had various meetings on it.
It's my understanding that some of the genesis of this might have been where there was actually a plan where an employee would be routinely working from home, and I think that probably did raise a serious question that this might answer. I will also point out, and it was probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago, the Board of Health, the then board, I wasn't on that board, determined that our senior administrator, who had been actually doing work at home and doing meeting minutes and trying to get them done without interruption, you know, was working from home, and that was found that was unacceptable, and she was directed to do all her work in the office. I will tell you that, you know, that led to quite a few inefficiencies of getting timely meeting minutes, but it was, you know, more efficient in that there were more public contact hours available at the office. So there are offsets and gives and takes on this. I certainly welcome Mike's comment about being able to set up a policy if the building is closed and so forth. It's the tweaks and the twiddles on this that I think have to be done or should be done before it's cast in stone. But I have nothing against the whole concept itself. Thank you.
All right. Any comment up here? All right, then I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 17.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, let's see, 1, 2,
Where's the pen?
okay. Are you voting, Ben? Article 17?
Sure. An absentee ballot now.
Would you like to ask us how you should, would you like to ask us how you should vote?
You could just tell me whether you're going yes or no.
This is a vote for yes right
All
now.
right.
Okay, and opposed? Okay, so 8-1. Okay, Article 18, to see if the town will vote to amend the Town Personnel Administration Plan, Section 18, by changing the sixth sentence to read as follows. The personnel file of employees who report to a board or committee shall be maintained in a locked file in the town administrator's office, with the exception of the town administrator's file, which shall be maintained in a locked file under the control of the Board of Selectmen in Town Hall, or take any other action relative thereto. Any comment?
Again, this is Personnel's article.
Right.
My understanding is the concern was with privacy and ensuring that these types of records are always available at a central location, but under lock and key, and controlled in the case of the town administrator by the, in case of everybody but the town administrator, by the town administrator, and otherwise in the control of the Board of Selectmen. And we were in favor of that by a 3-0 vote.
Okay, great. So, any comment up
I have
here?
a clarifying question, and I don't know how I feel about it. Does this apply to the elected, in other words, like the Board of Health or some other elected department that doesn't really report to the town administrator? Does this cover those boards as well?
It's written up to cover anyone who reports to a board or committee. So I don't know that an individual elected official would be subject to this, at least the way I read it.
No, I mean their employees. I don't know
No,
how I
that's
feel
what I
about
mean.
it.
If they're not reporting to a board or committee, in other
Well,
words,
the Board of Health is a board, I guess.
Right.
yes, so
They have employees, but they don't report to the,
it would apply to the Board of Health, and this is a sort of a filing mechanism. It's not it doesn't change supervisory
I
responsibilities.
We further answer that. The problem that our experts on the Personnel Board and Council and whatnot are concerned about is the dispersal of files all over the place in multiple locations with different degrees of security, and there are HIPAA laws, and there are all kinds of things. So in order to modernize our personnel system and to make sure that we're in compliance with state and federal law, the idea was just to bring everything together in one location where we could be sure that everything was done legally. It doesn't change anybody's legal authority over employees. It doesn't change the hiring, firing, compensation, any of those things. It's just to keep us from unintentionally violating laws.
okay.
David?
I just wanted to say that originally I think this started with evaluations. They were looking at how to file evaluations instead of filing them within each individual departments. And then it grew out of that. We also had a management note from the auditors that we should be working towards a centralized file of all the personnel. Now, once we have a central file, the individual departments will probably still maintain their own files on their individual workers, and legally those become part of the file as well. If somebody was going to access the files of a certain employee or get a copy of them, right now, as long as those departments are still operating with maintaining their own records, I have to copy all my files, and I have to go copy all the department's files. And access to those files are sometimes not easy to get because I have no authority on them right now.
Peter?
Yeah, Peter Laffoot, Board of Health. Without being able to take a vote of the board, I don't expect the Board of Health has any difficulty with this article.
Thank you.
Nancy?
Well, I sat in on some of the debate over this, and I'm a little confused now because I thought they were talking about evaluations, and I know they wanted to centralize stuff so that if there's any kind of problem where someone's looking for information, they have a centralized place. But I'm not sure whether we're now talking about, when Paul says HIPAA laws and stuff, whether the files that are now under the payroll person and so forth is all going to come down. No, it's just evaluations.
Personnel file.
Personnel files, any action. You actually have to keep two separate files. for the enrollment of somebody's health insurance and that kind of thing.
And that stays
That's
upstairs.
one separate confidential file in the payroll office. There's another set of files in the payroll office that contain things of public record, such as pay actions or offer letters and termination letters and all those kind of things that right now are very, very scattered.
Well, I know in my own case, I have a file of personnel things, and I don't mind those things being centralized in the town administrator's office as long as the town administrator is the only one with access to it, because we have a lot of people in and out of that, and I don't think that's fair to the personnel. So.
I don't read this to even apply to you, Nancy, given that it applies to boards and committees.
Well, my staff is under the personnel plan. I would assume that their evaluations would be part of that.
This is with the shift from the payroll and benefits from the treasurer under the accountant. That's also under my authority. So I'm not creating a separate file in the Board of Selectmen office. It's still going to be in the finance office.
But the evaluations will be in your office.
I want one file. I want one personnel file. So they will go in the personnel file with all the other personnel records.
In the accountant's office?
With payroll benefits office.
Well, I have a problem with that because you have a lot of people with access to that, whereas if it were in your office, it would be.
No,
It's locked.
it's locked. I mean, it's legally, anybody who's overseeing payroll and benefits in the town has a right to those files. That's from
Of
town council.
evaluations?
Yeah.
That's the way they do it.
Yeah, and again, this specifically says report to a board or commission, Nancy, so you may want to ask personnel what their intent was with this. But my impression is their intent was that they did not want to direct elected officials on how to conduct that business. You may have a different view based on the personnel plan, but I don't see that language in here, and I have to assume it was intentional.
Mark?
Sometimes the simplest ones get a little more complicated, but does this anticipate digital records as well? Or?
Currently, we don't have a system that has digital records, but maybe someday.
Data security is a pretty important issue looking forward that we need to pay a little more attention to.
Yeah, for sure.
But this doesn't get at it, and Mark makes a good point.
Next year. In the meantime, this looks good to me. All right. So, sure.
Does this article change who has access to these records? Or just puts it in one central location?
Location.
Okay, I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 18.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Is that everybody? Yes, okay. Thank you, unanimous. All right, Article 19, kennels. To see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 5 of the general bylaws by adding the following Section 5. No person shall maintain a kennel without obtaining a license, subject to annual renewal, in accordance with General Law C-140, Section 137A. The town clerk shall not issue a kennel license until a kennel has passed inspection by the animal control officer. The fee for such license shall be set by the town clerk in accordance with MGL Chapter 40, Section 22F, or take any other action relative thereto.
Explain the background.
Right.
There's a state law that basically says the same thing that's here. It came to our attention that there were kennels in Sherborn who weren't licensed, and that arose because there wasn't anything locally that people could see. So unless you were a lawyer and you knew that there was a state law that required you to go to the town clerk and get a license, essentially nobody knew it. So this was really to codify existing state law and to make sure that it's on our books and to make sure that the town clerk would have the revenue source to cover any costs that she might incur in administering the state law.
You good with this, Carol? Okay.
Part of this probably arose from last summer from an incident where several ladies from out of town set up on Brush Hill Road a dog walking kennel service, only to find out that neighbors actually could point out legally that this was not permissible. It seems that there is a lack of awareness on many sides here as to how to proceed on this thing. So I think this thing actually does clarify this to a certain extent. Beyond just simply operating a kennel, which is certainly defined under state law, it's probably a little more gray to determine what is permissible for, say, a dog walking service or a dog boarding service for just daytime. I don't know if you want to research that further to have this included, if it is thought that this does not include that already. But the incident that occurred last summer was fairly well documented in the Dover-Sherborn press, and the issues that needed to be addressed there, I think, were well presented by both the neighbors and by others. But I would applaud this as a service and a industry that the town, I think, would find quite useful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, this came up at the request of a neighbor.
Huh?
This did come up at the request of a neighbor for the incident that George was describing.
Can I just
Sure.
pick up on a point that he made? All of that is defined by state law, and there are cases and so on as to what is a kennel. That's a subject that's been disputed statewide. The law applies to all 351 cities and towns. We don't need to incorporate all of the definitions of whether a walking group is a kennel or whatnot. What I would envision here is that if the town clerk was uncertain, she'd call up town council and ask the town council, is this or isn't this, and you get an answer.
And Paul's right. How about that? Paul's right. There is a lot of confusion about the term kennel, but we don't need to define it in this bylaw. This bylaw refers to the state statute, which actually allows anybody with 3 or more dogs to have a kennel license. Okay. It doesn't give anybody permission to run a business in a place that's not zoned for it. That, you know, there's still that whole process. So what this does is give us a piece of paper that we can hand out to people after they've been inspected. And I have already asked town council to give us appropriate language for the licenses themselves and definitions and all of those things. So it's a matter of clarity.
Okay.
And because of the statute, most towns have something along these lines to ensure that people are properly licensed if they're maintaining what is it, 3 dogs, Carol? Or?
3, yeah. It's not required if you have 3 dogs, but you are permitted if you have 3 dogs to have a kennel license.
Have a kennel license.
But again, we're going to set the price that makes it so not everybody with 3 dogs wants to do that.
Right, and the other, from the zoning standpoint, this does not authorize anything that's not, and I think Carol just said that.
Yeah.
The issue that George described was a commercial kennel which had no right to operate in a residential zone, or at least that was the argument that was presented.
There is, however, Michael, nothing in this statute that would allow me to not grant a kennel license to somebody who wanted to operate that, as long as they've been inspected by the animal inspector.
But they couldn't, as a matter of zoning law, they'd be enforced against by a few.
Yes. So that's why I actually went to town council, because I want some language that reflects that on the kennel license.
But just as a point of clarity for Paul or for Carol, and as a 3-dog owner, my understanding is it's 4 or more dogs that this applies to, that you have to get the kennel license. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
It is, but it also says, if I'm pretty sure, and I haven't looked at it in probably 2 months, but somebody who has 3 could also have a kennel license, but then they would be held to all the kennel rules. So it wouldn't be advantageous, but it is in there.
I just want to add one other thing. While we're talking about 3 or 4 dogs, there were allegations that there were 40 dogs running amok on a piece of property with feces everywhere and so on. And I don't know if this is true or not, but this provides an additional regulatory tool. So while the process is fairly mechanical about getting the license, when the property is looked at and if there are horrific situations going on there, we at least have something that we can use to intervene and try to prevent cruelty to animals and a riot from the neighbors.
Well, it does specify that I cannot issue a kennel license until after the animal inspector has given me some sort of report. So that's our out on that kind of situation.
Great. Okay. Any comment up here? Thank you. So I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 19.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Unanimous. Article 20, to see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 3, Section 6.2F of the general bylaws by adding Recreation Commission after the words Town Forest Committee, or take any other action relative thereto. And I believe the intent of this is to allow the Recreation Committee to control their own land.
This was apparently a fix to something that should have been added a couple of years ago when the town adopted
So, housekeeping
some
article.
language. So it's a housekeeping article that they requested.
Okay. Any comment? It just puts the land that the is used by the Recreation Commission under their control, just as the cemeteries are under the control of the Cemetery Commission. Farm Pond is,
Mary, if my recollection serves me, this was when the town administrator bylaw was
Yes.
enacted, and there was some question as to the administrator's ability to control or exercise some authority over the town properties, buildings, et cetera. And they excluded out from that section things like cemetery and,
Right.
and schools, and it was an oversight because it was discussed. The Recreation Commission, which tends to their fields, et cetera, should have been excluded by the discussion, but the document in the warrant did not exclude them, so they're trying to remedy that problem now.
That's exactly it.
okay. All right, so if there's no further comment, any comment up here other than Jeff? Okay. I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 20.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Article 21, to see if the town will vote to amend Section 3.218 of the zoning bylaw by adding the language shown by the underlined text below so that it reads as follows. Restaurant. This is permissive in Business G district, prohibited in all others. Restaurant or other place for serving food and premises designed for the service and consumption of food and beverages inside a building or in an adjoining patio, subject to the limitations as to hours, manners, and manner and location of such outdoor service and consumption of any license issued by the selectmen pursuant to Chapter 140 of the general laws, and provided further that in no event is live or mechanical entertainment permitted outside of a building, except that the zoning board of appeals may grant a special permit for a specific event featuring outdoor live or mechanical entertainment, which event is to be held for the purpose of raising funds for any nonprofit, civic, or charitable organization, subject to such reasonable conditions as the Board of Appeals may impose for the purpose of mitigating the effects of noise, light, and traffic on nearby residences, provided that no restaurant may receive more than 2 such special permits in any calendar year, or take any other action relative thereto. Comment from the floor.
John Higley, 14 Saddlebrook Road, and I'm chairman of the planning board. This restaurant article is really because of the success of the Brewfest. It's come to attention, and that it's very popular in town, and it's permissible now by the existing bylaws. This article is co-sponsored by the planning board and the zoning board. And the zoning board now can has been permitting this, but their permitting it under the existing law that says the restaurant can't hold it, but a nonprofit can. And knowing that that's really not the intent of when the article is written. When the bylaw was written, excuse me. When the bylaw was written, the intent was other than the way it's being used. So while it's legal, it's not with the intent. But recognizing that the town seems to be very much in favor of this, this warrant article is designed to add some controls that's not there now. This adds a limitation that's not there now. And it also, so it recognizes the concerns in opposition to this, but does provide a change to the existing bylaw that was amended in 1988, about 26 years ago. So times have changed, and bylaws get changed if the town votes 2/3 vote. So what this was proposing is adding controls that limit it to 2 events per restaurant per year. Still has to go. Still has to get a special permit, so it retains all the controls and allows for specifically imposing mitigation of effects of noise, light, and traffic on nearby residences. So it adds controls, but it does change the laws to specifically enable up to 2 fundraising events per year for nonprofits.
Per restaurant.
Per restaurant, that's correct. And the planning board discussed this and voted unanimously in favor of this.
Thank you. Elliot?
Elliot Taylor, 30 North Main Street, 100 feet from the Sherborn Inn. We have an existing bylaw, has been read. No outdoor entertainment at a Sherborn restaurant. Without this bylaw, there might not be a Sherborn Inn. It was discussed very thoroughly. At the time, we were assured, the town meeting, no problems with the Sherborn Inn. There won't be any lights to bother the neighbors. The lights have been shining now for about 30 years, and I've been complaining, but to hell with me. But, so anyway, here we are. Now they want to have 2 a year. They're not supposed to have any per year. If we only had a zoning board of appeals that would listen to my pleas as in a butter across the street within 150 feet, there wouldn't be this problem. So I just recommend no action be taken on this, and we continue with no outdoor entertainment at a Sherborn restaurant. Because they also have a bylaw that says there'll be no objectionable noise. I've told them every time at the zoning board's meetings, if I hear one little peep coming from across the street when you have your damn beer party, I will complain. And I have every year. The beat goes on. So I just say we don't need it. They want to have their beer bash. Maybe next year they'll have marijuana with it. But I'm opposed. Please, no action on this stupid idiot article.
Okay, thank you, Elliot.
Board of Selectmen backed this proposal by a 3-0 vote. I was part of the Board of Appeals when a couple of those special permits were issued, and those all contained conditions to address Mr. Taylor's concerns. And this is a good event, and similar events that raise money for worthy causes or for the town's, services that town government can't pay for, things like that. They've done a great job with this event.
Thanks. Any further comment? Any comment up here?
Is it John, the planning board supports this, zoning board of appeals supports this. How did this issue come before you guys? On your own motion, or was it brought by an interested party?
The zoning board.
The zoning board bought it?
Right. The Sherborn Business Association talked about it in the past, but this language was drafted by the zoning board and the planning board.
Because they were uncomfortable with their pre-existing permitting process.
Yeah, it's nice to enforce the law as it was originally intended.
Given this is a restriction or an easing of a restriction on actual property, do the restaurant property owners have a position on this? The inn, I don't know, Frosty's, Sandwich, whoever serves food, do they have a position on this?
Well, certainly the present owners didn't come to any of our meetings, so not that I know of.
So the actual properties that will be affected have not expressed an opinion one way or the other on this change?
Not at our meetings.
I'm not telling you I'm opposed. Isn't that a little odd? When there's a zoning change proposed, isn't it usually brought by the people whose property is affected by the zoning change?
Yeah, I'd say the Sherborn Business Association was very much in favor of a change, so maybe that's representative of restaurants and other businesses
Jeff,
in the town.
Just to be fair, Jeff,
Just
to state a fact that the Sherborn Inn changed ownership about 2 days ago. So
No, I know this,
so
but-
that's why. I mean, they wouldn't have known about. I wouldn't think.
No, but this has been percolating for a year.
So
least.
Jeff, the only way this special permit gets issued is if somebody applies for it for an event at a particular restaurant, which means they have to have an agreement with the restaurant to use their property. They're not going to set up camp and set up a party in the backyard of the Sherborn Inn. So this doesn't impose anything on any restaurant. What this does is it allows the restaurant to contract with a group like the Business Association to have a particular event.
No, I get that. I'm just trying to understand the genesis. And I understand all the good reasons for this. It just seems to me a little odd. Every other situation where a zoning bylaw change is suggested or proposed, it's always the property owner who brings it forth, not someone else. So, for example, if this was happened, the Sherborn Inn could have 2 events and not have the Sherborn Business Association be one of them. It could be something from Tuscaloosa and something from San Diego. There's no restriction on any of these charitable events having anything to do with Sherborn, per this bylaw, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But aren't you just doing this? Aren't you just doing this to clean up language, basically?
No.
No, I think it's actually a change in the intent of the language.
I think it's substantive, I do.
But what?
So
I
I
don't
think this
understand
really,
what we're
yeah,
talking
I agree with Jeff. I think this is a change. The town has to decide they want to specifically enable this, where it's possible to do it now, again, without restriction, other than the special permit process.
So if somebody wanted to have, if Sherborn was approached 5 times during the year and you guys decided to give 5 special permits, they could have 5?
No, because 2 things.
So
One is, right now, our current language says only a nonprofit could do that, not a restaurant. A restaurant can't do it now. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, this specifically limits it to 2.
No, I understand that, but if a nonprofit wanted to do it in town with a restaurant and they applied for a permit, they can do it. And then if another one came in, a different one, and wanted to do it, they could do it. And if another one came in, they could do it. So technically, you could do 5 permits for nonprofits to have events, correct?
Yeah, at different restaurants.
So, Vicki, the zoning board was willing to
property basically.
The zoning board was willing to interpret the existing bylaw to allow the Business Association's Brewfest to go ahead.
I know what it's for, but I don't understand why we're having this discussion. That's why I'm talking about it, because it just doesn't seem, I mean, I don't understand why why it's such a big deal. Maybe I'm missing something.
I don't personally think it's a big deal. I think what this does is, as the chairman has said, it clarifies the language, and it gives the zoning board a clear path forward should that application come in front of them again. And I know they were very uncomfortable, and they were uncomfortable when I was on the board as well, with the lack of clarity in the process that they were moving forward with. This gives a lot of clarity, and as John has also suggested, it does put restrictions in there that ensure that there will be the kind of mitigation that the zoning board's been putting in on its own anyway.
Yeah, Michael's right, but Vicki, I think that the other potential explanation is that I think the zoning board might have been concerned that it was granting a permit to a charity if you will, with respect to the use of property that's not the charity. There's an interpretation of the current, not the proposed, the current
Right.
zoning board says that nonprofits can engage in this kind of activity, okay? And I think what the zoning board was saying in their interpretation is, since charities in town on their property have the right to have these kinds of parties, they extended or interpreted the statute or the bylaw to say that since they could have it on their own property, we can give them a special permit to have what they could have had on their own property in a restaurant in town, whereas otherwise they wouldn't. And I think part of the issue here is the question of, and that's why I pose my questions, because it's a little unusual, and that's why they were uncomfortable, a little unusual. So now they're saying, let's get rid of the middleman. Let's allow, if we're going to give a permit to a restaurant, okay, let's give the permit to a restaurant. But since what's generating this in our mind is the nonprofits wanting to do this, we're going to limit it to nonprofits.
Can I just respond to the business that this is unusual? I've been town council for decades, and I have to say the most usual thing is a planning board or a planning department producing zoning articles that applies to properties that are not owned by anybody on the planning board or by the planning director or whatever. That is the usual. There can be citizen articles that come forward, and usually citizen articles apply to their own property, but this is not a citizen article. So this falls into the usual, which is a government-sponsored article addressing what the government sees as a need to improve zoning.
Right.
That is the usual.
I agree 100%, but
That's
it
what I
seems a
took
little
it
odd
as.
that the interested party, namely the restaurants, have had zero position on it one way or the other. In the situation you described, usually the interested party comes forward and says, I like that idea, zoning board or planning board, but here apparently they're silent on the issue. That's all.
No, I think that's, I understand why you might think that. I think the owners of the Sherborn Inn in the past were very much in favor of this and enabling this. That's obvious because it was held there. So I think that's obvious. So I question, you're trying to draw a conclusion that I'm not sure I agree with, but or a perspective that I don't agree with, I guess, on that regard. And the inn just changed hands, so
Well, I
in terms
understand
of
the
this.
new people are.
Elliot?
The zoning board of appeals has not respected the existing law that says there'll be no outdoor entertainment. What says that they're going to respect this law that says only 2? Why not 3, 4, and 5? If you keep coming back to them, they'll say, oh, well, go ahead. Also, you asked the question, which I've asked, how come this permit, which I disagree with, was not issued to the Sherborn Inn, but a private organization? And you think if you're going to overturn something like this, you should have the permit should be given to the property owner and not the organization that's using your property.
Isn't that what
That's
this
what they're
does?
trying to do. That's what this is
I think
trying
that's
to do.
exactly what this does.
Well, it can be either, I think.
Please, just we'll say no action and we'll continue on.
Okay, if there's, oh, God.
No, just one question.
Permits, and I'll keep objecting.
Is the Brewfest a nonprofit organization?
Yes,
It is.
Brewfest is held by the Sherborn Business Association, which is a nonprofit.
Okay.
and they contribute money to the town every year.
Yeah,
Fund
the
projects.
proceeds go as grants to different community organizations.
Okay, if there's no further digressions, I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 21.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Article 22, to see if the town will vote to reduce the rate of interest that accrues on property taxes deferred by eligible taxpayers under General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 18A, from 8% to the monthly 2-year constant maturity treasury rate for July 1st of the applicable fiscal years, as published by the Federal Reserve H-15 release, with such reduced rate to apply to taxes assessed for any fiscal year beginning on or after July 1st, 2015, or take any other action relative thereto. Yvonne came and talked to us about this, and this is so that folks who have had their taxes deferred for possible hardship reasons, they're now required to pay 8%, and the desire is if these people are in somewhat financial straits, to give them the opportunity to have the current interest rate on their repayment for their deferred, not repayment, but their payment of deferred taxes. So the assessors supported this and so forth. Okay, is there a comment from the floor? Peter?
Peter Lifford on Doppingbrook Road. I think this is an excellent article. I would only hope that, probably you can't backdate it, but, I mean, these people have been paying 8% when their earnings have been, less than a half of 1%, and it's almost usury almost, and I would hope if you could find some means to backdate it a couple of years, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
All right, thank you, Peter. Any other? Okay, then I will, any comment up here? Russ?
Just a question. So
Yeah.
this is for people that have had to have their taxes deferred, instead of having to pay 8% interest back to the town, it's kind of current market rate,
Yes.
sort of an interest relief
Yes.
method, which if you read the state statute is permitted. You can make it lower than the 8%, just to help them out.
Right.
Any idea how much this will cost the town?
I do not.
Looks like
I
it's
do not.
prospective only, so
Yeah.
I don't know that we would know how much it would cost.
Right.
It's just going forward.
It is just going forward.
Nancy?
The assessor said it's a relatively small number of people who are doing this.
Yeah, that's my
Yes.
question. Does it happen a lot, or so?
Yeah.
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
All right. I
David.
didn't remember.
Right now, it looks like it would be just about 2% lower if somebody was taking it out after this was passed. But that can
But
change.
it looks for the future.
Yeah, at some point, it's been up to 12 or 14, beyond the 8.
Right. So whatever it is, it is.
Well, the statute actually says it's either 8% or such lower rate.
So the max would be
I
8.
think it would ceiling out at 8.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. All right. Okay. Then I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 22.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Is everybody?
Jeff stepped out.
Wait,
Jeff's not here.
Jeff's not here. Okay, so 8-0. Okay, before calling for motion on the following article, Article 23, I'm going to ask Ben Williams to speak briefly to what a motion for favorable action here would do, because this is an article that we are treating differently from the way we have treated it in the past.
All right. In past years, as I alluded to earlier, it was very common for us, for the advisory committee, to put together budgets that used free cash to close a budget gap, that is, where we were spending more than what was allowed by Prop 2.5. So there was the option of either using free cash to close that gap or having to go pass an override to increase our tax levy limit. We're going to, last year, this number was 0, and we were very proud of that because it was the first time in like 25 years that we had not had to use free cash to fill out the budget. This year we're going to recommend that there will be some free cash used, but it's not to let us spend above the tax levy limit, but rather it's simply a return of prior tax money to the taxpayers. As I alluded to earlier, free cash certified at almost $2 million. We've already used almost $8,000 for unpaid bills, $196,364. That's a correction to my sheet that the town accountant has been working with. Was for supplemental fiscal 15 budgets. We're also recommending, or I think in the next article, we will recommend moving $50,000 of free cash into the general stabilization fund just to keep it in an ample position. We've applied $45,000 to the town hydrants project, $13,500 to the transfer station fencing project, $20,000 for surge protection, $163,000 for regional school district capital needs. This morning, we also had $10,000 go to the campus parking project, $10,000 to the assessor's mapping project. And that's all very well and good. That's borrowing that we do not have to do, and that's future taxes that we will not have to collect. I think that totals about about 5.2 cents off the tax rate. So not a big amount, but it's genuine, real money that taxpayers will not have to pay in the future. I think we also have a situation that the town accountant could speak to where we need to move some money from free cash back to the farm pond revolving account. That would be $41,802. All the stuff I've been talking about totals $557,000. Oops, I should read it from here. Yeah, $557,497. That would leave us with a free cash balance of just a little over 1.4 million. Advisory had adopted a reserves policy a year or two ago, which suggested, not mandated, but suggested that the upper range for the free cash we keep be about 5% of the operating budget. That's roughly $1.25 million. That means that we have $153,897 difference, that can be applied to reduce the tax rate. My quick estimate is that with the money, that the operating budget is less than the tax levy limit, plus this $154,000 will take 28 cents off of next year's tax rate. That may or may not be enough to get us back below $20, but anyway, it's advisory had adopted a goal earlier this budget season to, if we could, not tax all the money just because we were legally allowed to. So this hopefully will be a welcome surprise to the taxpayers, or a welcome situation for the taxpayers. I guess it's appropriate to let the town accountant describe Farm Pond and why we need $42,000.
Just before she does, the other thing that we feel, not only will it be a nice surprise for the taxpayers, but it will be something that real estate agents can perhaps point to, that we are a town that has managed to reduce its tax rate and may make properties more desirable to buyers looking to come here. And if there is, more desire to buy properties here, prices will go up and taxes will go down. So,
and I would add even more desirable for retirees to stay here.
Yes, exactly. Their rates will go down while they're here, and when it's finally time for them to move on to something else, they'll get a better price for their house, we hope.
And as a stickler for some accuracy here, we don't know that the rates will go down, but we know they will not be as high as they otherwise would have been.
Right. And we're hoping, we're hoping they'll go down. Thanks, Irene.
Addressing the farm pond item, we're recommending a transfer of $41,802 from free cash to the farm pond reserve fund. The reason why is each year town meeting votes their budget. The money is then transferred into the general fund to cover the expenditures for that budget. Typically what occurs is at the end of the fiscal year, any transfer done out of that reserve or that special revenue fund, less expenditures, that surplus goes back to that revolving fund or special revenue fund. And that's through the end of the year process for municipal relief for budget transfers from May 15th to July 15th. So basically you're ensuring that the farm pond user fees that are collected and are supposed to be used for the purpose of just farm pond are still intact at the end of the fiscal year. What we found by looking back to 2010 through the close of 2014 is the transfer back to the Farm Pond Reserve Fund had not occurred. The method of reviewing these actions were to look at our actual fund balance reported to the state, add revenues collected, look at transfers, and then look at actually what was physically expended. And that's when, over the course of 4 years, it was identified that $41,802 fell into the general fund free cash calculation that should have been returned back to Farm Pond revolving fund. So that's why our recommendation is to restore them and then make sure going forward that we take our year-end action to return any unused revenues, the surplus from the revenues less expense.
Any comment from the floor? Okay, any comment up here? We're good. Okay, I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 23 to appropriate $153,896 from free cash for tax relief, and further to transfer $41,802 to the Farm Pond revolving fund from free cash.
I will make that motion with one very slight change.
Okay.
I'd like to round up the free cash for the tax relief to be $154,000. And it's all because I'm such a wild and crazy spender.
Okay, so I'll take that as an amended motion, friendly amendment, whatever.
Second.
Okay? All in favor? All right.
Congratulations, Sherborn.
Okay. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money, and if so, what sum, for the purpose of increasing the stabilization fund or take any other action relative thereto. We're proposing $50,000 be added to the general stabilization fund from free cash, and I think that's been addressed somewhat already, but is there any comment? Any comment up here? Okay, I will take a motion then to appropriate $50,000 to the general stabilization fund from free cash.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? Unanimous. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money, and if so, what sum, for the purpose of funding the other post-employment benefits OPEB liability trust fund, or take any other action relative thereto. We had, anyone who remembers from last year, we had for a number of years appropriated money for OPEBs to a stabilization fund where it earns no interest. And last year we appropriated directly to the OPEB trust where the interest is considerably more than zero. And we also transferred a sum of money from the old stabilization fund into the OPEB trust. And we would like to do that again, move another $100,000 from the OPEB stabilization fund to the OPEB trust. That is no new money. That is money that is already sitting there. So is there any comment from the floor? Peter?
Just a question, do you have to also mention that you're also putting in the $100,000 you've appropriated in this year's budget?
That article appropriates that to the trust fund directly.
Directly to the trust fund?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
And while I've got you on OPEB, just can you speak?
Oh, I knew it. I knew it.
Speak in general in terms of the strategy as you see it today, because you've only appropriated $100,000, right, in the budget, even though, and it's just for the town of Sherborn, even though a funding schedule would suggest $200,000 would get you there over 30 years. And also speak, if you can, about the fact that the region appropriates nothing, and their funding schedule would ask for about $500,000. And by not doing the $500,000, their $16 or $18 million unfunded OPEB liability as it sits today grows by $1 million a year. So could you just speak to those?
Sure. I'll say what we always say in Sherborn, we do things in gradual steps here, okay? And we're going from, no OPEB contributions, in the past, we've started making contributions to that, and we are trying to balance the different values of contributing to the OPEB trust fund with the ability to give the taxpayers a little bit of relief and still maintain a recognition of contribution when the auditors come in and look at our books. They can say, we see that you are contributing. And so we feel comfortable for the time being, once we start getting all this revenue that we keep hearing about we're going to get from various plans, maybe we can contribute more. As far as the regional schools is concerned, this actually came up at the meeting, it's a regional school committee meeting where the regional budget was voted, and someone brought it up there. The region acknowledges that they have done nothing for this so far. They expressed an interest, if the towns are interested, in looking at that next year as some possibility. And again, even with Dover on board, they stressed moving in a slow and deliberative fashion and maybe funding a little bit at a time.
Yeah, so I was at that meeting. I think the expression they used is that goes in a parking lot, which is the first time I've heard that expression.
Right.
But that all of the groups that were there, which included selectmen from both towns, but also the two finance
Right.
committees, said, we would be happy to get together with the regional school committee to talk about this and figure out a strategy long-term. So that was, for me, that was good to hear that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so that's correct. Okay, any other comment? All right.
I
yeah.
have a comment
Oh,
up here. Were you up here now, Mary? So,
We are at Article 25.
right, so you're saying that this article is just to transfer funds into the liability trust fund, is that correct?
Correct.
But it doesn't say from the other fund.
It's going to be in the
minus.
motion.
So my question is, at what point, I don't know what's left in the existing stabilization fund. If at some point, if we should transfer all of it to the trust fund.
Yeah, I think we're doing, the feeling last year was that we wanted to do some dollar cost averaging.
Right.
And transfer it a little bit at a time.
I don't know what the
Irene,
balances are.
how much is after this 100,000, should we vote it?
After this 100,000, it would be $215,606.03.
In the stabilization fund.
Stabilization.
Correct.
Okay.
So, maybe all of it next year, maybe
Yeah,
another,
okay.
whatever.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
So, if there's no more comment, I will take a motion to recommend transferring $100,000 from the OPEB stabilization fund to the OPEB trust.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Yes. Okay, I have to call time here for just 2 minutes because Pat needs to change the media.
That's why I went earlier. I missed.
Okay, welcome back. We will now address Article 26. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to amend Section 565 Special Permit Requirements, subsection C and H of the zoning bylaw, as shown below, with deletions in strike-through type and additions in bold and underlined. Building occupancy. Okay. The occupancy of multi-dwelling projects, it's not that one, in residence EA districts shall be limited to families at least one member of which is 55 years of age or older, or for a development that is not restricted by age, and a minimum of 25% of the units within the development shall be restricted to occupancy by persons eligible for low or moderate income units as defined in 760 CMR 8.02 as the same may be amended from time to time. H, open space. At least 25% of the total area of all lots within a contiguous residence EA district shall, except as provided below, remain unbuilt upon and set aside for conservation, outdoor recreation, or park purposes or buffer areas. Such open land shall be in addition to required front, side, and rear yards, except in cases where the total open space, including such yard areas, but excluding any land within 30 feet of a dwelling unit, exceeds 50% of the total parcel area. The required open, huh?
Why not waive reading? It's a long.
Well, I got one more section to go. Okay,
He has momentum.
I do.
And she
Oh,
has-
I
she
have
has
to
a
go
public
on to the
control
next
of it.
page. I'm sorry, I thought I was at the bottom of the page. Well, in any case, I'm through all the parts changing. So, we're good. Let me finish that sentence. The open space may be in one or more parcels of a size and shape appropriate for the intended use and may be conveyed either to and accepted by the town or its conservation commission to a legal association comprised of the homeowners within such lot or to a nonprofit organization, the principal purpose of which is the conservation of open space. It goes on, but there are no further changes to that. Now, John Higley wants to speak to that, and he actually wants us to vote the two parts separately if we're able to do that.
Right. John Higley, 14 Saddlebrook Road, Chairman of the Planning Board. The Planning Board voted favorably with some changes. This is a citizen's petition, so we would like to make some amendments to the wording and also consider these separately, not vote on them separately. The first, this is a section to 5.6, which is about the EA zone, elder and affordable zone. And the 5.6.5C is about building occupancy. And the citizen's petition, as is in the warrant, describes adding a minimum of 25% of the units to be affordable. It's not specified now. So we think that's a great idea. It should be specified for a number of good reasons. But we thought, as we discussed it, there needs to be more clear language. With regard to adding 25%, Leland Farms has 10 affordable units out of 17, not 25, but more, but it's not specified. Specifying 25% matches the requirement for a 40B development, so this provides an incentive for a developer to initiate a project under town rules and controls rather than the state rules, than the state oversight, and profit limits that come with a state's specification through a 40B give an incentive to work through this approach instead of a 40B. However, the language is subject to needs some clarification, so we've got a proposal to change that, and I've just given you a copy of that. We thought it would be clearer just to rewrite section C. It's short, so I'll read it. So to replace what was just read in section C, we'll replace it with multi-dwelling developments in residence EA districts shall be designated either age-restricted or affordable. If designated age-restricted, occupancy shall be limited to families at least one member of which is 55 years of age or older. If affordable, a minimum of 25% of the units within the entire development shall be restricted to occupancy by persons eligible for low or moderate income housing as defined in 760 CMR 56, as the same may be amended from time to time.
You would change it in your motion.
We're not changing.
Excuse me.
You don't change the citizen's petition. You actually just change it in the motion for town meeting.
You're not dealing with the warrant here at all.
Okay.
You're dealing with your motions. And we suggest, if you are so inclined, that you give favorable action on the planning board's amended article rather than the original citizen article.
Correct. Thank you, Paul.
Mary, can I give some background on this
Yes.
article, just so there's a context for it? I don't think John mentioned this in terms of the changes. This article came about mostly initially, although I think it has general application. It would have general application. Mostly initially to try to facilitate a development by a landowner who wanted to do a 40B without going through the 40B process effectively, and had the land to do it, and was kind of encouraged in that direction as a way to provide more affordable housing for the town. And the article that follows, which is a rezoning, reflects that particular property. So this would have general application, but it also, in terms of talking with this particular individual, it revealed that our bylaw did not have a percentage for the affordable requirement. And so this would accomplish what was supposed to, what this particular person was looking to do, which is to build a 40B in effect, but under a town's zoning and not having to go through the elaborate 40B processes.
Okay, I have one question, okay, which is, does this address the issue that we've dealt with over a number of years of elderly or affordable, or elderly and affordable? Does it, as I read this, it looks to me that it restricts it to an either or. And I'm just wondering if that is the case, or if I'm misreading it, or what.
Well, the way it's written, Mary, it uses the word "and," so it says, shall be limited to families at least one member which is 55 years of age or older, or for a development that is not restricted by age, comma, and a minimum of 25% of the unit shall be restricted to occupancy by those eligible for lower moderate income units. So that was the way the citizens wrote it,
Right.
was you were either going to get an unrestricted project with 25% low and moderate, or you're going to get an age-restricted project with 25% low or moderate.
Right, I'm looking at the new language.
Well, that's the amendment. I think does what you said. It does kind of change that intent a little bit. So it becomes an or, which is similar to how it's drafted now, which is similar to how the existing bylaw is, I should say.
Right, so it's either, it still must be either or. Can we get and?
Well, that was the citizens petition's initial intent, was and. It sounds like the planning board rejected that and is trying to do something a little different.
Okay, so we don't want to have and ever.
Well, with respect, I mean, depends on who you're asking. I think the town has an interest in trying to facilitate as many affordable units as we can, because that helps defend us against
Right.
people who want to come in
I'm
and
totally on board
do
with
a
that.
40B to blow out the
I want to make sure
zoning.
this gives us the most flexibility.
Well, that's not what the planning board's recommending to you, it sounds like.
No, but John, isn't the current language, if I recall from last year's discussion, the current language, although it's called elderly and affordable, the actual language never refers to affordable. It only refers to elderly.
Or affordable.
No, I don't think it refers to affordable at all.
The way it's been interpreted has been or.
Yeah, I understand, but when you look at that, the language
The
in
language is not clear.
it's not clear.
So in C, Jeff, it does, the existing language, if you look at the article, it talks about occupancy by persons eligible for lower moderate income units. That's affordable. So it is in the existing bylaw.
That's how we did Leland Farms. Leland Farms was not an age-restricted development, it was an affordable.
Oh, all right, we don't have to debate that, I'm afraid, but that's fine. But the point of the matter, this one is simply saying, if you're 55 or older, affordability is irrelevant, to Mary's point.
Well, unless the planning board bakes it into the approval, because, for example, Abbey Road has affordable units, and it came in under this article.
No, they can do it, but what I'm saying is, right now, under the EA, the way this language is, you go in there, says, I've got 55 or older. They can approve you whether or not they're expensive units or not, because you satisfy the 55 or older, and that 55 or older, to Mary's point, is not income dependent. They're separate clauses, either or. So you're either affordable, which is now covered clearly, or you're 55 or older, but if you're 55 or older, you could be, Bill Gates, because there's no limit, there's no income limit on 55 for the EA district, is the way I'm reading this. Is that your intent?
We felt that that our proposed language is consistent with the way we've been using, building occupancy now, in terms of or. The citizens' petition was it could be a mix of affordable and age restricted, and that gets to be difficult. That gets to be tricky on how you would actually apply that. So, so we felt just this is a smaller change to the, in terms of either or. This is consistent with how we've been using it so far with our existing EA districts, and it's a smaller change. So
There's only been one, or I guess two planning board approved EA developments that were elderly, and both of those had affordable units in them. So even if you've been interpreting it as either or, as a practical matter, the developers in both have ended up with a proposal that involved affordability also. The Pulte one that didn't pass town meeting and the Abbey Road one that did pass town meeting. And I'm not aware that there were ever any others.
But we have Leland and Woodhaven,
Which are not 55 and up. Oh, well, Woodhaven is. Woodhaven's 55 and up and affordable. So there's three that have been both, but there aren't any that are only 55 and up. And I guess it may be that we always could have done that, but this is clarifying that you can do a 55 and up without affordability.
What's Kendall? What's
Sunshine Dairy, no?
yeah? What's the property in Kendall?
I think that was PUD, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that?
No,
That went in 55 and
I
up?
think so.
Okay.
I just have a question. I didn't realize that Abbey Road had affordable units in it.
It does not.
It doesn't? Okay, my mistake.
No.
I didn't think so.
So,
It does not.
Okay.
so if I could ask, maybe John can help me, because I'm confused here a little bit. The way I read what we have today in our zoning bylaws, it's either, it's all 55 or it's 100% affordable. And it sounds like you somehow have interpreted that to have a mixture of one or the other, perhaps. I don't know. But what I'm trying to get to is how, whether it's the citizens article as written or as you've amended it, how we're not watering down the affordable piece by putting the 25% in there versus what I read as 100%.
Right. Your read of it being 100% is not how it's been interpreted in the past. It's just not. So Leland, for instance, is 10 out of 17.
But aren't they all qualified, counted as affordable
No.
at Leland? No.
No, they're not.
It's Woodhaven then.
So because that's not how it has been interpreted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul's point is, if it's rental, 25% has to be affordable, but all the
All of
rental
them are, yes.
count. But we don't have that
Yes.
example. But so it's not clear. So we propose making it clear, and we propose making it in this regard consistent with how we've been using this in the past.
So could you use an example, if I could just direct, so if you used, let's say, a 20-unit development, and 25% are affordable under what's being proposed here, what are the remaining 75%? Do they have to be age-restricted then, or they can be anything?
If it's
Market rate?
no, it can be anything.
They can be anything, okay. Versus today, in terms of the interpretation, they can be affordable, or they can be market rate, or what, under the
Some
existing?
mix, like Leland.
Like Leland, which is the one example we have, basically. So how would we, well,
So what
and
we're
that was
doing is
done
we're saying,
20-something
let's be
years
clear.
ago.
What we're proposing is, let's make it clear. Let's specify 25%, as opposed to, if we make it 35 or 45, we don't feel like we'll be competitive with the 40B market. If we make it 2%, we're not pushing as far as we can.
Yeah.
It doesn't limit if a developer wants to make it 100% or 50%, they can. We're just saying a minimum.
Can I just have one last follow-up? Can you also talk about what you envision the town's involvement in ongoing compliance and transactions that take place with these affordable units? Because the experience I've seen with the town in terms of Leland Farms, it was we weren't very good at it, let's say, and there was quite a bit of cost involved that was just buried in there, you know. No, not establishing it, but when there was a transaction a few years back, the town had legal fees, it had marketing fees, and it was not smooth, I'll just say, and it tied people up at the administrative level. So I'm just curious about that.
Of the law, where you have an affordable unit. I just want to respond to Peter's statement that maybe affordable units aren't well planned. Well, we went to the maximum of the law, so all affordable units in Massachusetts have the same problem, and that problem is the limits that you can have on resale capabilities. When you have a covenant to have something affordable and the person can't sell that unit, it's been determined that you can't, the person's not a slave to their property, that they have an opportunity to keep it affordable, then they have an opportunity to offer it to the town, and the town can buy it. But if there's no buyer, then the person can go to the market, and that's driven by the United States Constitution. It's not something that we had come up with as a flaw in the planning. I mean, we were stuck with the fact that you can't have a property owner with property that he can't get rid of, even though he's done everything you're supposed to do. And in response to that, this town, in its wisdom, stepped in on many occasions when affordable units were about to become market units, and we made the investment, and we kept those units affordable. That's good planning. But that's the limit of the law. It's not that, again, mistakes were made. It's the limit of what you can do with affordable units.
And I fully appreciate that. And, no, but this is also in an effort to get a friendly 40B type of a zoning setup, which, and all I'm just trying to understand is whether this creates additional burden for the town that otherwise wouldn't be there under a regular 40B, which is monitored, administered by the state, from what I understand. So I'm looking for some perspective from an expert.
Yeah, this is not a 40B. This is just amending our existing bylaw and making it clearer. It's first it's clarifying what we've got, and we're trying to clarify it in a way that's consistent with the way we've been applying it. And then but it is specifying 25%, whereas now it's not specified. It's just not. To put some of this in perspective, this is 5.6. There used to be a 5.7 that was multi-dwelling, and we merged it. So there is no 5.7 in our current bylaw. So we merged it, and we didn't do that great a job merging it. A third part to this is I'm going to propose we change the purpose slightly as well. Because when we merged in enhanced 5.6, we didn't, this is sort of clarification that got lost. So this is, C is really almost administrative.
And John, in the third piece of it you're talking about, have you run that past town council to make sure she agrees it's within the scope of the citizen article?
Yeah, and her opinion is that it's in this meeting it's up to the chair of advisory, and at town meeting it will be up to the moderator.
To phrase the motion in such a way that it accomplishes what you're hoping to do here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and that would be reading this.
Right. Yeah.
So it would be Section C, building I would be asking for a favorable motion on Section C, building occupancy, multi-dwelling developments in residence EA districts shall be designated either age-restricted or affordable. If designated age-restricted, occupancy shall be limited to families of at least one member of which is 55 years of age or older. If affordable, a minimum of 25% of the units within the entire development shall be restricted to occupancy by persons eligible for low or moderate income housing as defined in 760 CMR 56. as the same may be amended from time to time. Is that what you're saying? That's what you want me to read as the motion?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, ask me
This
again.
second
I just read.
This second
Yeah.
part here is what you want us to-
Correct, yes, the
and
part you read
that's
is the part that we would like to amend this.
to say.
We would like to, at town meeting, we would like to propose this as an amendment to the citizens petition.
Okay, and I hate to do this, but I ask again, does this make it impossible to have a development that is designated elderly and affordable only? So it is all elderly and it is affordable as well? Because I have,
I don't see it as preventing them
Preventing
from
that?
asking as a condition of approval that the developer provide affordable units.
No, but I think Mary makes a good point here, because suppose someone comes in and wants, my understanding is if it's elderly, that all the units have to be elderly, have at least one person. So what if you had someone that came in and offered a complex that had 100 units, and 25 units were affordable and 25 units were elderly, and 50 were no restriction at all? It would be unclear how this amendment would handle it.
I'm not sure it's set up to deal with a
Yeah.
development like that, Jeff.
Well, if I might ask, when you say designated, that's simply for the purposes of zoning and so forth. It's not what actually happens in the development. And by that I mean, it used to be when you registered your car with the DMV, they had a limited number of colors, and so if you had a teal car, you'd have to choose whether to designate it as blue or designate it as green. And so here, it sounds like you designate it either age-restricted or affordable, but no matter which one you called it, you could also do the other. That is, you could call it age-restricted because every unit required 55 or older, yet have some affordable units,
Yeah.
25% affordable units.
That's right, because it
And so
says that.
to Jeff's question,
It says that in the
You
next.
designated
the next-
both?
Yeah,
'cause it
that's,
says that in the next sentence.
so presumably the opposite to Jeff's question would also apply? You could have a development that was a 25% low and moderate, but the developer could voluntarily impose a 55 and up restriction on another fraction of those units? Is that?
Sure.
Yeah, so it's designated one of the two, and then in addition.
Yeah, if they want to impose on themselves
Right.
more restriction, that
Thank you.
doesn't prohibit them from
makes sense.
doing it.
It makes sense, but I think we're missing the point I brought was that you could have someone that, the word in here doesn't say, it says that if it's designated age restricted. To me, that implies, at least what I think you're inferring, is that 100% of the units are designated age restricted.
No.
No? Just some number age restricted? How do you
It
determine?
has to be designated age restricted or.
Right, and
or-
how do you, I guess this is silent on how you achieve the designation of age restricted.
You just say it's 55 or over.
You just designate
So,
it.
I understand it, but
No,
every
I-
unit has to be age restricted.
so it says
read it too, Jeff.
No.
occupancy
Vicky's
limited.
disagreeing with me.
The occupancy shall be limited to at least one person over 55. That's
For every
100%.
unit, for every unit.
100%.
Yeah.
I think the way it's written, it says if it's designated affordable, then
25%.
it will
That's
be
clear.
affordable, as it's defined here, at least 25%. If it's designated age restricted, all the buildings, all the housing units have to be age
Okay.
restricted.
Well, the corollary is that, you're making this clearer on the 25% for the affordable. It should, to me, say 100% of the units should be age restricted. In other words, it's not clear to me that this implies 100%, to be designated as age restricted, that you have to have 100% of the
Well, it
units.
says it's limited to families with at least one person.
But that's like every unit.
I guess it does say that.
Yeah, all right.
It's-
Well, as
it
long
is.
as
It's either-
practice, yeah.
It is. I think it's clear.
All right.
And by the way, that's the way we've been applying our current
Yeah,
law.
it's precedent.
So what we proposed is trying to be consistent the way Sherborn has been applying this law. So we might say, let's make a bigger change. The only change, other than trying to be consistent with the way we've been applying, the only change we're adding is specifying 25%, a minimum of 25%.
That makes
That's
sense.
the only change And even that, in the past hasn't been clear. It wasn't specified.
Nice, John. Have your tweaks, have you ran them by the citizens, the 11, 12 citizens that put this forward to see whether they're copacetic with what you want to do to the article?
It's been run by a member of that. I can't say that the planning board met with each individual who signed the petition.
And when that one member, were they concur with your change?
Yeah.
Peter?
Oh, sorry.
Peter Leffernan, I'd like to draw your attention to the process you're in the midst of here, which is, I don't think, anything we've ever done before. You're taking a citizen's petition. The planning board is in favor of the idea of the citizen's petition and now is trying to take the citizen's petition as their own. They've given you language here today that I don't know that anybody's seen until today.
Right.
And you hear yourselves arguing over it. We're making sausage here is what we're doing. And you're going to take yourself through a pretzel of motions and sub-motions and so forth at town meeting to make this occur. And even just the limited number of people we have here that are trying to interpret and understand it and get a different understanding of it, I really believe this should come forward from the planning board. And I'm surprised that it comes forward as a citizen's petition. I understand that that was done for expediency. It had to get in somehow. But it seriously should come from the planning board with fully thought out. And you folks would have seen it weeks ago, all right? And had meetings on it and discussed it and understood the nuances, understood the history and the future of it. But I don't think you have any of that right now. And I would, despite the merits of the change, I would hope you take no action on this. Thank you.
We could vote no action on this with no prejudice, without prejudice? Is such a thing possible, such that we're...
No action is always...
Well, I guess, but...
Would you actually table this for further review and clarification?
No, I don't want to do that.
Mary, I mean, to Peter's comment, the purpose of this citizen's petition, it didn't arise organically. It was somebody who wanted to facilitate getting onto the town meeting warrant in, as Peter pointed out, kind of a short period of time, written with the help of Gino Carlucci originally and presumably revised with Gino's help as well. And the intent was to facilitate a development of a type at a location in town where it makes sense to have a development that'll bring tax revenue to the town, provide walkability, and come in under a zoning article so it doesn't become a 40B for a developer who really didn't want to go through the 40B process and impose something. And so from a tax revenue and development incentive and center of town kind of standpoint, this is a good development. It does compete with other 40B developments in town, and there may be some, people who don't want that to happen. There are a couple of 40Bs or EA projects that are already in place, but as a town, we've at least talked about trying to increase the tax base and then provide locations for development that makes sense. And this would be and I'm skipping ahead to the next article, but this would be on North Main Street, and this would facilitate a development and also improve the bylaw generally for purposes of other developments. That said, I also am seeing this language for the first time, so I appreciate the difficulty of reading it, but I would hate to see you do anything that would slow this down in a way that it couldn't be revived before town meeting.
Well, we could vote no action and it'd be revived.
I mean, it could be revived at town meeting.
I just want to be sure that you're not misled by something that was said. The process that you are involved in is one that goes on throughout the state all the time. There are citizen zoning articles. The planning board comes in with their recommendations. Many advisory committees take the position that they're going to adopt whatever the planning board says, period, and they give no meaningful consideration to it. You're giving more consideration to it than many finance or advisory committees are doing, but that's your right. But in giving consideration, don't feel like you're doing something different or unusual or unprecedented. It is the process. Citizens have a right in this state to submit petitions. The planning board not only has the power to amend and comment on it, they are required to take up the citizen articles and make recommendations to town meeting. In fact, if they didn't come to town meeting with a recommendation, you cannot vote on the article at all.
Really?
That takes away your jurisdiction. So they have a duty to come up
Okay.
for every zoning article. They have a
Okay.
duty, and they are doing their duty.
My discomfort was having a citizen's petition. None of the citizens are here, and the planning board is here
Like you just said.
making, and so if that's, if you're saying. if
That's
you're
their
s-
job.
If you're saying, if you're saying that, then- okay, if you're saying that, then that's fine.
If 48 Section 5 says that a planning board has to review and report
Okay.
on every zoning article to
Okay.
town meeting.
Okay. Peter?
Peter Lifford. One might expect if they were doing that, they'd be doing it in concert with the original petitioner. But to Mike's point, this was initiated in pointed purpose of a project, the town trying to help a project move forward. And my understanding, and what I understand of the project is that that owner, the developer that was proposing condominiums, has moved on, and he no longer has that developer builder working with him. And so I think taken separately, all by itself, this first piece of this article is a good thing to do. I think, again, the planning board needs clarification of this. It's surprising to me how confusing it is when they come forward with clear language, how confusing it is to the folks that are here and how confusing it might be to town meeting. But as you move forward, don't think that the intent here isn't a good intent. The intent is to I agree with the intent to facilitate projects in support of the tax base and affordability, et cetera, in the town. But again, it's not clear to me exactly what's happening here.
No, I mean, the intent obviously is good, but according to the write-up the planning board just gave us, John just gave us, because of Article 27, no PDP was presented with this, there's really, the whole thing is moot. There's no actual plan. So really, it would almost behoove the planning board to spend more time on writing the Article 26 and getting it clear, because it's definitely not unequivocal, because it's moot, because there's no actual plan to go forward.
So, Lanny, I can address that also, which is that it is entirely possible that there won't be an actual plan to go forward before town meeting on Article 27. It would still, I believe, be helpful for the town to signal that they were receptive to the kind of development that's being proposed through adopting Article 26 or something that is a modified version of Article 26. If and when after that a particular development plan is brought to the planning board, it would still need to be voted on at town meeting, which could be done at a special town meeting or at next year's town meeting.
Can I ask you a question, John? We're addressing the two parts of this separately, but what does the second part do?
The second part is also adding something that we think is a good idea. It is not related to any specific project. It's an issue where the amount of open space is specified in our current language, but it turns out our language doesn't take into account odd-shaped lots with lots of frontage or lots of setback. So the goal of EA is to provide housing and conserve land, protect open space, among other goals. So our current language is based on the setbacks. If there's a lot that has lots of twists and turns, so there's lots of setback, then it's hard to reach the open space requirement. So this does two things. One is it specifies, it adds a second option. And again, this is not related to any specific project. It's one that's come up when we've looked at, for instance, Abbey Road project, the 2 to 4 North Main project, where they did meet the open space requirement, but with great difficulty and cooperation from the town. And it was difficult, even though, if more than 50% of the land is open space, but it's eaten up with a lot of setback because of the shape of the parcel, This provides an option that we think makes a lot of sense.
So my question is, I think we understood that from your presentation to us, and I guess I phrased my question poorly, which was the amendment that you want to make to that second part of the article. How does that change what the article, the second part of the article originally said?
The amendment provides the second option. The amendment provides a second option that increases the total open space requirement by 50%, but it allows the setback areas to be included. That's our amendment.
Well, what I'm hearing is that the planning board, in principle, supports the petition 26C, 26H. All you're saying is that you think their language is a little off, because you study this stuff all the time, and you want to fix that language. The language you fix for 26C is very similar. It's just you're making, I think it's clearer, and it's better. And in 28, you're saying they use a different term than you use, and you're trying to coordinate the language to the rest of your... So I think it's, if we like the concept here, I don't see any reason why we can't say that we recommend favorable action subject to those amendments, okay, being adopted by motion or otherwise on the floor of town meeting. And you will be supporting that, because these are going to be before town meeting whether we say anything about them or not. They're there. And if we don't, we're either going to recommend favorable action or non-favorable action, okay? Planning board is saying, essentially, recommend favorable action with our wording changes to make it better. And so I don't see why we can't recommend favorable actions subject to those changes.
I'd go for that. I think that's, yeah, I think that's good.
But I don't know why we can't just tweak the motion here if we're going to be making it better. We've done it with other motions. He's coming forward and making a couple of...
Because I don't think we can technically change
We
this
can't
language.
change the language.
This has to be the language before town meeting. What we can say is, we recommend favorable action subject to the changed language. So that town meeting has, and they will either accept that motion or not. If they accept it, we're done. If they don't, we go back to this, I think is the way Corey will do it.
Can I ask
I
a
don't know if I
question
agree,
about
but
this
I'm fine with
Irene
all
wanted
that.
to make a comment also.
Your motion would be to support the article as amended by the planning board.
Okay.
And then the planning board motion would also be printed in the copy that goes out to the citizens.
Our motion today would be that, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
John, can I ask a
And a
clarification?
write-up could include it if we wanted it to.
Right, right. Yeah, well, we need to.
Do we have to clarify that the citizens, I know what you said, John, but I mean, do we have to clarify this? This is still a citizen's petition. What if they don't agree with the amended language? And they're the ones who show up as the warrant article sponsor.
Recommending it as
As a planning
whether
board.
they support it or not.
We're
We're
recommending what they're
recommending it
doing.
as.
No, I understand that. I guess it just seems...
We've
Huh?
we've actually had people oppose their own articles in the past, so.
Huh, okay.
They have.
Yeah, I remember standing up and asking them to vote down a planning board article that I'd written.
Right,
and-
yeah, I mean, that's happened before.
Is, I mean,
I
It's
agree.
also
I know,
exactly-
it's just that someone sponsored it.
It's exactly the same as if you have an article sponsored by the Council on Aging, and instead of them giving them what they want, you come up with a motion with a different amount.
Right.
Well, the same thing, if a citizen brings an article forward, you don't need to do a motion based on their article. You can do a motion based on the amount that you want to do.
Okay.
And can I ask
Okay.
an explanatory question on this, so I understand it, what John's intent is in terms of the open space? It says, first of all, I think you deleted all, but you don't show it in the red line, so I think you need to add the word all before each in the first line and cross it out. But secondly, the change you make looks like what it says is that now 25% of each individual lot in a land assemblage has to be kept as open space. So if you have a development where you're trying to achieve a cluster on a particular lot surrounded by other lots that you were intending to keep as open space, you no longer can do a plan like that unless you ensure that each of those lots retains 25% open space. And I'm wondering why that's a good thing in terms of facilitating development and logical kinds of designs. Like, why do you want to limit developer flexibility like that by changing the requirement?
It should be adding an option, not.
Well, the first sentence, John, used to say at least 25% of the total area of all land, what does it say, all lots within a contiguous residential EA district shall, which means that you took the entire land assembly and you made sure there was at least 25% open space. What this is saying is each individual lot within that assemblage of land would individually need to meet a 25% open space requirement. If you had a very tiny lot that was supposed to be a corner of the parking lot, for example, your plan gets blown out the window by this. I don't know, and I don't know if you've tested this on Abbey Road, which is an assemblage of lots, or whether you've thought about it in the context of other projects, but that's a concern for me. I think the other way was actually clearer and more logical and more consistent with the way most places draft these kinds of bylaws.
Yeah, we took out contiguous because we felt that was not helping.
Okay.
It didn't, because in total of each lot.
I think the purpose of contiguous was to ensure that when you calculated the 25% requirement, you didn't do it on all the EA districts that were scattered around town. You did it on the particular district that you were looking to have created for the particular development that had a plan approved.
But it also, it shouldn't be attaching to an existing developed parcel. So
Understood, there's a freeze on the existing developments. I'm
yeah.
looking at going forward.
So we took out contiguous, so because so that it was about, so this is about the specific project that's being considered, not the whole EA zone. In other words, we don't want a developer to come in and develop one lot and take credit for open space in another contiguous lot that's not.
Yeah, I think you've got you may have a problem with the definition of lot, but that's something probably to work out with Gino. But Gino and Town Council, I would kind of keep an open mind on that. I think you may be trying to accomplish what I think you should be trying to accomplish, but I'm not sure you got there with this language.
But can I suggest, from the point of view of the advisory
Right.
committee, if you did a motion, as Irene suggested, or as Jeff Rudin had suggested, where you would give favorable action subject to the amendments from the planning board, town council will then work with the planning board to make sure the motion picks up any possible glitches that Michael has brought to John's attention. But I don't think you need now to all become zoning experts on this thing.
Right.
You've
Well,
got
because we
town council
can't.
to do that.
No, it's, I think we should just.
Okay.
But we don't actually need the specific language from the planning board yet to pass that motion?
I think you've got the general language.
Yes, of course. But, okay. And John, you're comfortable that you're just making it clearer and you're not actually changing the spirit of the citizens petition?
Yes, I'm comfortable with that. That's the case.
Just trying to cut this.
With open space, with H, we're changing language so that we're using language that's already defined in our bylaws, where the citizens petition included lot and yard and parcel and a lot of we standardized it to we have setback, we have lot in our language. So the amendment we're making to the citizens petition in H is very small. It's just clarifying language. The other part, though, that is in purposes, and this wasn't specified in the citizens petition. We looked at it and said, again, the history of this is that EA 5.6 was merged with 5.7, which was multi-dwelling, and the purposes language was never very clear. So this is a case where we're simply adding a line to the existing purposes 5.6.1 and some paginate or some identity to the specific components. So purposes, we're adding the line to meet the demonstrated needs of low and moderate income persons without regard to age. That was in our Zone M language, which was 5.7, I think like 2003, and when we merged it, we just didn't get stuck in there. So kind of, Jeff, to your point, this is specifying it. It was, the intent is there, we've been using that intent, but we never specified it, so we're suggesting adding that, and then we, just like the formatting-wise, we just added some definition to the components. So that's another, that is a change. Citizens petition didn't suggest changing purposes. And in this case, it's just consistent with what we're talking about. C and H address this, so we think we should fix purposes.
Mayor, on that one, I might suggest that, I think that change is fine. I think we may run into, Corey is very strict, as
Yes.
I've observed, with amendments or motions that are outside the four corners of
Yes.
the petition. I think his first two sections are clearly within those four corners.
Right.
This one might be slightly outside it. You may want to just bring that up independent of us at the time you discuss and says, I have one more change I'd like to make for the floor. If she thinks it's in the four corners, she'll let you do it.
Right.
As opposed to us kind of saying, okay, we adopt it because we may be getting ahead of ourselves.
Right.
Jeff, maybe a further friendly suggestion would be to run it by Corey well ahead of town meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And I have a question now that if we seem to be, and I'm going to take a consensus here without a vote right now from the advisory members. Are we in general, do we think we want to support this, both sections of this? Do people?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so is it then necessary to do this twice, or can we just vote this single article subject to the amendments specified by the planning board? Can we just do this once and be done?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I think we can, but I'd like to ask the planning, I think that the language needs to be cleaned up still.
We can't do that.
We can't clean that up.
No, not by us, but by the planning board.
Planning board. Yeah,
It will be cleaned up,
right,
yeah.
okay. All right, so I will take a motion for favorable action on Article 26, subject, Article 26. I will take a motion for favorable action on this article, subject to the amendments specified by the planning board.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? All right. Anyone opposed? Are you opposed? Yeah. Okay, so 8-1. All right. Article 27, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning map by adding parcel 25 on Assessor's Map 10, also known as 59 North Main Street, and consisting of approximately 6.35 acres to the EA district, and to approve a preliminary development plan for such parcel in accordance with section 5.6.3 of the zoning bylaw, or take any other action relative thereto. Does anyone want to comment on this?
I can comment a little
Please
bit,
do.
which is that this is the parcel with the house that's falling
Right.
down up on North Main Street. This is the parcel that the developer, who was interested in doing something a little different, owns. And as far as I know, and what I've been able to glean from David, he does not have a formal plan.
Right.
He presented kind of a sketch plan at one of our meetings. He's looking for a development partner, and he may or may not be ready to go before
Right.
town meeting, but he's not ready to go now.
Yeah. And so you wouldn't be disappointed by no action on this?
You can't take action.
Right.
We held a hearing, never got a preliminary development plan. The town meeting can't vote on something without a preliminary development.
Okay, great. Okay, well then, I will, for Article 27, I will take a motion for no action on this article.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Unanimous? Okay. Article 28, to see if the town will vote to create an economic development overlay zone consisting of exiting, I assume that's existing town zones for business general, business professional, planned unit development, special permit, and elderly affordable zones, and to request that the planning board and board of selectmen utilize any and all tools necessary to develop the town center to provide more and better services for residents, generate tax revenue, and reduce taxes for land within 1/2 mile by public way from the intersection of North-South Main Street and Washington Street, or take any other action thereto. Is there anyone to speak for this article there?
Not for it, I just about it.
Okay, whatever. I hear you.
Frank has South Main Street. I mean, what it actually says is to reduce taxes for land within 1/2 mile by public way from the intersection of North Main and Washington. I don't think that's what he meant, but that's what it says.
You know, whatever. Who knows what he meant? He's not here to back his own article.
Yeah, I had occasion to talk to Harley about this myself. One thing I'd like to point out is the planning board has a very nice study that they commissioned about 4 years ago, which is posted on the planning board website. which goes into considerable detail about what is the characteristics of the land and what is described as the north and south village areas along Route 16 and 27. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. I would suggest very strongly that if this article proceeds in any direction at all, that the work that the town has already been done and paid for be also taken into consideration, because I think a lot of the questions that might be raised on this particular article are already answered to some extent by the work that this town has already done.
Okay, thank you.
Mary, just for the purposes of the record, as they say, I don't remember this ever being brought to advisory before.
It was not. The proponent of the original proponent of the article, I had an email exchange with him. I offered him the opportunity to come to our March 18th meeting. He told me he would be there at 7:15, and that was the last I heard. He never showed up. He's never contacted me since.
Since? Wow, okay.
Sure.
Elliot Taylor, 30 North Main. 30 North Main is 3/10 of a mile from this intersection, so this involves my property. I have not been notified that they are planning to rezone my property. They tried this about 3 years ago, and Paul Durensis told me that they could not rezone my property unless I agreed to it. So how many people have been notified of this proposal? I think it starts with 0
And
and
I
a
think it
decimal
finishes
point.
with 0 too, Elliot.
So I think this should just be thrown out.
Any further discussion up here? Okay. I will take, for Article 28, I will take a motion for no action.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Article 29, that's unanimous. To see if the town will vote to request that the Board of Selectmen create a town parcel study committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of studying potential uses of 5 properties consisting of the vacant lot next to Town Hall, the town forest near Pine Hill School, CM&D garage property, Laurel Fields, and Jameson Fields, in an effort to identify how those properties may be used to reduce taxes and meeting affordable housing obligations while retaining the rural character of Sherborn, or take any other action thereto.
You're for this one too.
I live here. You know who I am.
I do, Elliot.
You have an idea, okay.
I do.
This involves many abutting properties to my little bit. And until they've got some sort of a plan on what they might want to do, I'm opposed to it.
Thank you, Elliot.
I don't see, looking this over, I don't see that this is going to be practical in any way unless we have a big flood, tsunami, or tornado come through that will wipe out the whole place and start over. We could always give it back to the Indians and build a casino.
There you go. And that would solve our revenue problem, Elliot. Okay, if there is no...
Well, I'd like to ask the selectmen, do they find any merit in this? Because it seems to me it's just to study various town-owned parcels, and we already talked about one of these mentioned, which was the the caustic property here.
And I'll speak just for myself because we intentionally didn't take a vote on this. I don't really see any merit to creating another committee to study stuff that the planning board's presumably already studying. They're I think we're always open to ideas. It's just this is another process and another commitment of time and another study or task force that may or may not come up with something that's timely and helpful. So.
The purpose of this is on the planning board radar?
Yeah, just to, the planning board is updating the general plan and has formed 3 groups: fiscal and economic, land use, and built environment. So there's about 30 people working on in those 3 groups that are, this is within the scope of their task.
Great, thank you.
So the only other thing, Mary, is just in my notes here, I have one word: unnecessary. And the point is that we could do that without town meeting vote, should we choose to do that.
Thanks, Peter. Nancy?
I just wanted to point out, other than the many studies that have already taken up going that direction, we've had several committees that have studied next door to death and made all kinds of recommendations that actually I sat down with Harley and showed him. He was unaware of that, and so we had a nice chat. But we have already studied to death. If somebody wants to pull those together, it doesn't take another committee.
I hear you. Thank you. All right, then, if there's no further discussion up here, I will take a motion for no action on Article 29.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. Unanimous? All right. Thank you, everyone, and I call for a motion to adjourn this hearing.
Second.
All in favor? All right, Pat has been very gracious, as always, in helping us set up, and I'm wondering if there are a couple of volunteers to help us break down.